Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hunt and Withrow is underway on this Friday edition, football weekend edition of Hot Mike on OutKick and the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us there, whether that's on the YouTube live stream by searching OutKick and subscribing to our channel, or listening to this great radio partner. A jam-packed show will preview all of the big games on both the college and NFL level, and that comes in many different forms. We've got our own thoughts and opinions and analysis. Todd Fuhrman joins us in 20 minutes, the host of Bet the Board and his great podcast. He hops in to tell us how to win with our wagering over the weekend. Michael Fabiano tells us from the fantasy football angle. He is the expert when it comes to that with Sports Illustrated. And Andy Staples, in an hour, hits all of the big topics. He's the insider for On 3, for college football, from Tennessee and Florida to Michigan State now without Mel Tucker at the helm, rather. And, I mean, we'll see how they do against number 8 Washington tomorrow. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Andy Staples played at Florida also, so knows a thing or two about this rivalry game. One that you're not accustomed to seeing Tennessee favored in the Swamp.
No.
Especially close to a touchdown.
No one's buying it either.
It's got Tennessee fans nervous, but also thinking probably the better team going into this game. I don't know. We'll get into it with Andy. I don't know how much we can say we truly know about these two teams as of right now. And I'm saying that for both of them. There's some stats. We'll get into my games of the week a little bit later.
Yeah, that's an hour 3.
There's some odd stats coming out of that Florida-Utah game that if you read it one way, you think, man, Florida may be worse than we even thought. And if you read them another way, you can look at certain things and say, well, they're not that bad. And Graham Mertz has actually been pretty good so far. So maybe Florida's not as bad, and maybe Tennessee's not as good as people thought coming into the year. So we'll know a lot more tomorrow night around 10 o'clock Central Time when this game's over. But plenty to talk about with Andy Staples, not just Tennessee, Florida, but a full slate of games. Colorado State, the Deion Sanders show. Coach
Interesting
Prime
games at noon Eastern.
Continues. There's a lot of good stuff out there to get into.
Plenty of headlines as well. That's where we head now to the Scorched Earth topics here on Hot Mike with Hunt and Withrow on OutKick. Chad, we start with Thursday Night Football. Man, the NFL was scorched from football fans tuning in to Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime for that first half with the turnovers and the punts, the 3 and outs, the sloppy play, and then they finally picked some things up scoring-wise in the second half. But Philly leaves with a victory. They're now 2-0, and they have not played their best football. Meanwhile, Minnesota continues to have issues, all of the issues. There's not one thing to point to. They just have so many problems, it's hard to keep count. They're 0-2 to begin the year.
Yeah, sloppy game. I thought Al Michaels was a tad bit more energetic throughout the game. That was one thing I was noticing to see if the energy level was back up. And he made one big gaffe people are talking about, but it's understandable. He called it Veteran Stadium last night when they came back from break, which it has not been Veteran Stadium since I think 2002 or 2003. Yeah. But he went back into a bit of a time capsule there, but that's understandable.
Sometimes we all want to do that.
The only thing Minnesota, yeah, no doubt. I'm sure we'd all pay the premium price to be able to do that with some of the headlines out there. The only thing Minnesota has is Justin Jefferson is just out of this world good. I mean, you can just throw it in his vicinity, and there could be 2 guys around him, and he finds a way to come up with the football. And Kirk Cousins is a big part of that. He does a good job of fitting it into small spaces where only he can catch it.
He and Jefferson torched Philly.
I mean, when I say only he can catch it, I'm convinced that Justin Jefferson is the only human who could catch some of these footballs, and
fair.
He makes it look easy. And he is well covered at times. I mean, it's impressive to watch those two, but that's really all they have right now.
And that last year, that's all they needed.
Yeah.
And they don't have
to win a bunch of close games.
Yeah. So the difference last year, they had 3 different players that lost fumbles all season. Last night, they had 4 different players to lose a fumble. That's the difference in losing close games versus winning them. Winning 11 one-score games a year ago, and now they're losing 2 in a row. And 1 to Tampa, which will come back to bite them in terms of the wild card hunt that they're likely in. I still think they're good, but they're just not great. They're not the 12-win team we saw last season. That's for sure.
No, and how about Philly fans into the first quarter booing their own team in that game last night after a 3-and-out? I mean, I know Philly goes hard, but even I was thinking that's some quick boo birds right there. And it was like a tie game, or Philly was ahead at that point very early in the game, and the boo birds were out.
Justin Jefferson, the first player to achieve 5,000 yards receiving in quick form and fashion. His dominance is still understated. Had he had 2,000 yards and became the first player to have a 2,000-yard receiving season, he's in the MVP discussion and likely gets some voters on his side in a big way. He tailed off towards the end of last season. Tyreek Hill's already stated that's his goal this year, by the way, 2,000 yards.
He's off to a good start.
They have the extra game as well. But the role that he's on, and knowing that the second half of last week didn't meet with what he did in the first half, which was dominant, all you have to do is feed him the football, and he's going to put up yards. And the race is on between him and Tyreek Hill to become the first player to 2,000.
I really believe, Hutton, he is the one player, one receiver in all of sports that is given more credit than the quarterback is in the offense.
Yeah.
He is the only guy that I can pinpoint and say, the only reason, and this is a train of thought, the only reason Kirk Cousins is seen as good is because of Justin Jefferson's greatness. Every other scenario, it's flipped. It's this quarterback makes this receiver better.
Yeah.
And boy, it's great for this receiver to have this quarterback. That's not the case with Cousins and Jefferson.
Well, and last year I was doing the column on the MVP debate and the chase and the competition. Jefferson is mentioned more than just Offensive Player of the Year. He won that a year ago. Now he can put himself into MVP. The difference, though, is they've got to win. He can't just put up numbers and not be on the winning side. Last year they were, and they were on more televisions than not a year ago. And if they continue on this trend, by the way, I believe they play the Chargers next week, a potential 0-3 start, that's crippling for a franchise that should be. There are columnists that are now saying if they lose next week, Kirk Cousins could be traded to the New York Jets. He's in the final year of his deal.
That would be something. That would definitely be an upgrade for the Jets at quarterback.
Based
that's
on what
interesting
their expectations
to watch.
are.
Yeah, and I mean, you could have Chargers and Vikings looking at 0-3 going into next week, which is crazy.
Could.
And also, I mean, which team is it more important for? I would say Vikings, but it's pretty disappointing for both, given some preseason expectations and quarterback situations in both spots.
I'm with you on that because it depends on what the Chiefs do in Jacksonville. If they start 0-2, then the Chargers are thinking, we're still in this. We're not following the 2-0 Kansas City Chiefs. Chad, the worst rule in sports, I don't know if you agree, but the fumble through the end zone for a touchback instead of getting the football deep in the territory, where it would be if it's fumbled anywhere else out of bounds or recovered by the opponent. Jefferson fumbles at the 1. The game is 10-7 at this point. Would have been 14-10, and Philly gets the touchback and the football back instead of backed up against the end zone. And the way that game was being played at the time, sloppy, there would have been more boo birds out in Philadelphia based on that possession than what there were after the first.
It's definitely the most punitive of rules in,
it doesn't
in
meet
football.
the play.
Yeah, because, it's so arbitrary. Because if you fumble it going towards the goal line on the sideline and it goes out at the 1-foot line,
right,
you have the ball. And you're about to score at the 1-foot line. But because it goes a little bit further, when it leaves your hands, suddenly it's the other team's ball out of bounds, out of the end zone, and on the 20-yard line. I've never liked the rule. And that was a big moment for the Vikings in this game. And they still fought and had a chance late. I know it was an onside kick. But they gave themselves chances in the second half. That was a big moment in the game when that happened.
Well, and then think about just from the defensive standpoint, too. You know, you even if you want to give the football to the other team, they shouldn't get the touchback on that. You know, like it can be punitive, but it shouldn't be where Philadelphia takes over and it's no big deal based on their field position. And, I mean, the game would have been much better, too. Worst rule, I'm pointing to that. Unless you want to point to, is it a forward pass or a fumble, incomplete or a fumble, which we've seen multiple times recently with the Titans. AFC South Championship could have been on the line, a title there, plus a Week 1 win, potentially.
Yeah,
That's another bad rule because it's inconsistent. One was incomplete, one was a fumble, and they're the same play.
I don't. What kills me is at times when even the idea of the officials letting a play out and not ruling something down is a problem. When you clearly are watching, I think that's a fumble, but they're blowing the whistle, stopping the play, and there's a return happening
for a touchdown
the other way. I hate when that goes down. I hate when it's pretty clear. This happens more in college than NFL, but pretty clear something is what everyone thought it was upon review, and they say there's not enough evidence to overturn it. And you just think to yourself, really? Are you watching the same thing? That's what gets me every time.
Chad, A.J. Brown speaks his mind. Jalen Hurts also says that he and A.J. are great friends. They were working out prior to the trade that sent him packing from Nashville to Philadelphia. A.J. was working privately with Jalen Hurts. They are the best of friends. Not last night on the sidelines, with A.J. frustrated on the sideline with his quarterback. Hurts responded. You can see. And then you have the coaching staff come over and acknowledge and try to break things up and separate them. No shoving, just arguing. A.J. wants the football. He was actually targeted the most in the game by any Philadelphia receiver. 6 targets. He only had about 20-plus yards receiving. But he's a star. So is Hurts. And I don't mind friction on the sideline when things are not off to a good start. They were not good a week ago in New England. That's why Philly fans are upset and frustrated. The players are too, because they're not picking up where they left off from what was a dominant offense a year ago, at least in the passing game.
Well,
they're
a
back and
big
running.
Part of their success last year, not just A.J. Brown on the field having a great season, it's his mindset. It's the mentality that he brings, that he wants the ball, especially when the game is at the biggest moments. And that's exactly what you want. That rubs off on teammates. I have no issue with this. Look, if it becomes a common reoccurring thing,
it won't.
Where you're coming to the sideline and getting angry at your quarterback because you're not getting the ball, getting your love, that's a different story. I'm with you, though, Hutton. I don't think it's going to become that because A.J. Brown won't allow it to become that, and Jalen Hurts won't allow it to become that. I also think this Eagles offense is too good to be this mediocre for that long. I think they're going to snap out of it, and it's going to start to look better. There were some flashes of that last night. There was a third down play where if A.J. Brown's coming across on a little drag route, and when you get it to him in space, just how strong of a player he is and how he can run through arm tackles, fun to watch in that moment. I think they're going to be fine, but a little bit of friction like this, no problem at all. Because that's what when you sign A.J. Brown, you're signing up for that mentality, and you love it.
There's more than friction from the Minnesota Vikings. Alex Mattison, who took over for Dalvin Cook as the full-time running back, a statement from the Minnesota Vikings minutes ago. We're sickened by the hatred and racial slurs directed towards Alexander Mattison following last night's game. There simply is no room for racist words or actions in sports or society. The Vikings will continue to fight to eliminate hate, to educate and foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community that respects and values our unique backgrounds. We stand with Alexander and all players who unfortunately experience this type of ignorant and prejudicial behavior, and we ask our fans to continue to fight to eliminate racism. These are apparently just direct messages, DMs, based on others retweeting this to Mattison post-game.
So what I want to see with stories like this, a follow-up, and here's the follow-up I want. Publicize who the people are that send these. Out them.
Yeah.
Let their employers know who they are. I hate how we see these things and these accusations of someone was getting this hate and this. I want to know who did it. I want the immediate follow to be, we have located these IP addresses of people that sent these, whether it be through an anonymous account, some nameless, faceless troll on social media doing it. I want to know who's behind those. I want to know if it's a bot of some sort doing these things. I want to know all of it. Let's investigate. I'm sure the employers of these people who are idiots that are sending racist things to a football player, they would like to know if they're employing someone dumb enough to do this. Out these people. Let's see it. I mean, we talk about a society that keeps receipts right now.
Mattison with screenshots,
These are the receipts I want to see. Mattison should turn them over to the Vikings, and then they should investigate where it's coming from. Is this an actual person's account that's sending these things? And let's find out who's actually doing it. And I want to know who did it. With all these stories, I want to know.
Looking at his X account plus Instagram, I don't see that he's done that yet. But he has retweeted others who are pushing the anti-hate retweets. I'm looking at them, just scrolling through. I'm with you, Chad. And unfortunately, the NFL and the Vikings would certainly know because they would have had to seen this.
Yeah.
Right? Through Mattison.
But again, publicize who the people are. If it's the Vikings, if it's Mattison himself, I don't care. If there's a person behind this account, let's let everyone know who this person is.
Actually, I'm looking at his story now. He has shared the handful of these posts, and then he's commented on it himself through the story. We'll get back to this and try to dig into who they are. Yeah. Coming up, Todd Fuhrman gives us the best wagers going into the weekend, college and pro. Next.
Looking back on that interaction, it seems like you really don't care. I mean, it seems like you wouldn't have gone about things any differently. But, what does it say to you when there's these business owners who don't understand your vision of what you have for these places? I mean, you're giving them publicity at the end of the day. Even if you're not giving them the best review on the board, you're still putting their name out there on a platform that allows millions of people to realize their business when otherwise they probably would have just remained, a smaller business.
Yeah, he's a moron. It had nothing to do with how I was ranking the pizza. And he said that. He said a million things, like he doesn't want publicity. He keeps talking about it. But he just hated me. He didn't really know who I was. I'm sure it's the way his politics are, because if you go look at his feed, it's what I'd expect. It's extreme left, and those are the types of people who generally hate me before they meet me. But he said he wanted to yell at me before I even stepped in the store, so it had nothing to do with the review. And he's a clown show. He is one of the worst people. He's everything that is wrong with this country, and that's not exaggerating. But he's made up his mind before he meets somebody, picks a fight, and then the rest is history. But for me, it's good. It was the most viral thing we've had in a long time.
Yeah. And have you had any other pizza owners from places you covered in the past reach out to you and say, wow, we can't believe this guy? Like, look at the great things that you've done for our business because of the One Bite Pizza review.
Yeah, that's the thing that's crazy. There's a lot of things that people could cherry pick that people have said about me that be like, oh, he's a bad guy, this and that. Pizza and small business is not one of them. That pretty uniformly across the board. People like Dave, very good for pizza. He's very good for small business. It's how we're doing this pizza fest. Like, we get places that would never do it, but it's like, we like I did an interview with Lucali, which is one of the most famous pizza places there is. And they're asking Mark, the owner, is like, why'd you agree? We don't see Lucali doing this type of thing. It's like, Dave has done so much good for the pizza industry. This guy didn't care. This guy had no answers. He was just a clown.
Okay, so I'm going to get to the Pizza Fest in just 1 second. I'm just curious, how did you get so into pizza? Was it just something, as a East Coaster, you felt like you needed to insert your voice into the ongoing, never-ending discussion of what pizza is the best, or was there something else behind it?
Yeah, so we talk about anything at Barstool, and probably 10, 12 years ago, myself and Big Cat Dan Katz, who's one of our top guys, we did a debate. If you could eat one food the rest of your life, what would it be? He said tacos. I said pizza, and then we're like, let's just do it. He said tacos because of burritos, because like breakfast burritos. So he was just eating burritos. I just started eating pizza for like a month. That's it. And people were asking, well, what do you think of it? And that's where I coined, like, all right, I'll take one bite and score it. It just kind of clicked. I could tell it resonated with people, and that's where it was born from.
Okay, so now let's talk about your pizza festival. It is called the One Bite Pizza Festival. Very appropriate. It's taking place September 23rd in New York City. How do you prepare for such an event? I mean, so many different options at your disposal in one afternoon. Are you going to have to just forego pizza for the next couple weeks to really prepare yourself?
Well, I'm a trained professional. I don't know about the people going to it. I eat so much pizza, I'm probably better prepared, but I do think that will be a challenge for people going because we have so many great places. People have asked how this came about, and it was always suggested, hey, you should do a pizza fest.
Glad you're with us for Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow here on OutKick from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. If you haven't taken your shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment. Here's the big reason why. Exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, grab this unique offer. Right now, new PointsBet users can get up to $1,000 in second chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. Get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet, OutKick.com/bet. Complete the registration process with PointsBet and make your first bet. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. You've got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Head to OutKick.com/bet now to snag this offer. If you just listen to this segment, you're not going to need the second chance. Todd Fuhrman joins us, the host of Bet the Board, which is an excellent podcast to get insider info on how you should play the weekend. Todd, great to have you on, man, as always.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me, but the $100 million question before we get into some of the games this weekend, how much airbrushing went on with that picture of you guys to lead into the segment, or were you guys just completely caked with makeup to try and take 10 to 12 years off your face?
Oh man, it was. I think there's some digital airbrush work going on as well as
you know what it was?
Can't confirm that there was a lot of makeup on us in New York.
It was AI.
That promo.
It was
photo
AI.
Shoot. Yeah, that's not even me actually.
Yeah.
I think that was just a model they brought in to portray me that day.
100 years from now, we will be claimed to be aliens in Mexico.
What's hilarious, Todd, if you continue watching, like when the show ends. You know, we're on for 3 hours a day. Then there's a 21-hour period where it's like a waiting room for the next show. The photo that is shown in that one was a photo shoot done by a technician here at OutKick that was done in this studio, not professional at all. But we choose to put that one up for 21 hours. And you will see in that one, there's no makeup on me. So if you want to see the real me that Todd Fuhrman has seen, look at the one that's up for 21 hours where I'm in a polo shirt, no makeup, no digital airbrushing going on. That's the photo for you. This other one, that's just a work of fiction.
I mean, Withrow, let's be honest here. That makes me look a lot
better, though.
Yeah, you're a man of the people then. So I can understand you peeling back that exterior, no filter, showing everybody your true countenance for 21 hours a day, and you only ham it up for the 3 hours that you guys are actually on air.
Todd, Jennifer Aniston does it, and it's brave. Right, when they take the selfie with no makeup on, when Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, did that. I feel like I'm being brave, just showing the world my actual face.
Don't get a candle like Gwyneth.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Todd, can you explain the money and the betting market for Colorado right now?
I mean, it's unlike anything we've seen over the last handful of years, quite honestly. When you look at the buzz that Dion has brought to a non-traditional program in Colorado, unless you're 30 some odd years old, you don't remember a day where Colorado football was relevant with Cordell Stewart and Michael Westbrook back in the 90s, where they were vying for national titles. But Dion took this team from the depths of the Power Five, and in just 2 games already has him as the main flashpoint in all of college football. You look at what they did week 1, winning outright on the road in Fort Worth as a 20.5-point underdog, following that up with a dominant defensive effort against Nebraska in week 2. And then Jay Norvell can't leave well enough alone, deciding to poke the bear. And what otherwise probably would have been a look-ahead spot for Colorado to big dates against Oregon and USC coming up, that's where we are now. But when we talk about some of the betting volume and the attention that Colorado has had, this number here will discourage a lot of folks. They're not running to the window to lay 23, upwards of 24 points. But all that can change when you look at the schedule that we have that doesn't offer all that much in the way of intriguing matchups. And we know this is the infamous get out game at 9 o'clock Central on national TV.
Todd, you're a pro. You're a pro's pro. You've been at this for a while. You've done this for a while, and you've been a part of the media game for a while. Can you ever recall a bigger turn in terms of interest and questions you get about a program than the lack of any questions or interest you would have from anyone in the public about a Colorado line of 2022 compared to Colorado in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, nowhere close. And Withrow, if you dig into some of the numbers for how bad Colorado was last year, I mean, they broke all sorts of records from points per game standpoint, yardage differential, all of the negative correlation. But I guess in the era we're in, when you completely overhaul the roster, you bring in 87 fresh faces, you have the chance to do a do-over. And I'll give Deion a ton of credit because while he's bold, he's brash, he's confident, he knows what he knows, and he knew that he had to bring in an elite offensive coordinator in Sean Lewis, who was the former head coach at Kent State, to lead this offense. And defensively, he brings in Charles Kelly, which is paying immediate dividends as well. But this is a Colorado team who professional bettors, quite honestly, couldn't get enough of when it came to betting them under their win total. I mean, we saw this thing open at 5.5 in January. It closed as low as 3.5 before the season started. And folks know that those tickets are pretty much charitable donations to the sportsbook coffers. But I think we'll get a much better illustration of who Colorado really is. Maybe not this weekend when they have a target on their back for the Rocky Mountain Showdown, but when they step up in class and play two teams that are viable, not just Pac-12 contenders, but legitimate chances to be in the national championship discussion in USC and Oregon.
Todd Fuhrman with us, host of Bet the Board. Check out the podcast. So Tennessee and Florida, unranked Florida hosting Tennessee. It's a big spot for both programs, but both fan bases are skeptical about their own team here and the history behind this game and what happened last year at Neyland. Todd, Vegas doesn't look at history, right? They're just looking at what is trending right now in the moment. And even Vegas is skeptical on the Vols. At least that's how I read this.
You know, it's been interesting to watch the way this number moved because we saw some prominent shops out here in the desert open Tennessee as a 4-point road favorite. That number was immediately bet up to right around a touchdown. And once some of the offshore markets got involved, we saw that price push to 7.5. And it got to a point where professional bettors went, you know what, this is a road too far to cross. And what we've seen now is kind of one-way traffic from that professional contingent, taking it any price of 7 or better with the Gators. And to your point, when you try and put this in a historical context, you know, we have ATS data going all the way back to the mid-'70s. And we have one of the best in the business in college football, a gentleman by the name of Brad Powers, who joins us every Wednesday on the Bet the Board podcast. He dug into some of that ATS history, and he never found an instance where Tennessee was this big a favorite on the road in Gainesville. And while Tennessee, to a certain extent, got the monkey off their back last year, winning that game 38-33 against Florida, they didn't cover the closing number. There were fits and spurts where we saw this Tennessee offense look like they were stuck in neutral before they got going. And through 2 data points thus far with this Vols team, I think the big takeaway for me is that Ramel Keaton and Brew McCoy are nice pieces, but they're not Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman in terms of their elite ability to take the top off of a defense. Joe Milton doesn't have that same command of the offense that we saw from Hendon Hooker. And it was actually Hendon Hooker's legs last year that was an X factor that Billy Napier and company never accounted for when he went for north of 100 yards. You look at Milton, he can throw the ball a country mile. He looks the part getting off the bus. But we've seen this offense already stall out, at least for a couple of drives in each of the last 2 games. I mean, the red zone efficiency wasn't there against Austin Peay. And I really believe this Tennessee team is better at the running back position than they are at wide receiver. So let's see some of the stress they're able to put on Florida and how good that Vols defense against the Florida offense that probably wants to run the football to shorten the game. They have Ricky Pearsall in the receiving room, but Graham Mertz isn't going to put the fear of God into anybody in that Tennessee defensive backfield.
Well, and with everything you just said, Todd, I wonder how quickly it becomes the under is the smart bet with Tennessee games because they're going to get that shine of the Josh Heupel offense from a year ago. But what I've seen through 2 games is a much improved defense, and with everything you just said with the data points, an offense that's not nearly as good as last year.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the reason that you have seen some under money coming in this game as well. As we sit here talking about it on a Friday afternoon, 58.5s were cleared out of the market. We're now down in that 56.5 range. For me, I actually went under the total in the first half at 28.5. I mean, that number is no longer available. But my thought process was that if Tennessee starts slow, that plays into Florida's hands. They want to try and play a ball control game. They know they don't have the playmakers. And if Florida has a chance to pull off the outright upset, I think they have to win this game somewhere in the ballpark of 24-21, 27-24. Because as you start to get into the 30s, I just don't see a path for Florida to be successful. Very similar to what I said breaking down Texas and Alabama last week. And people kind of looked at me like I had 3 eyes. I said, if Alabama is going to beat Texas, they need to do it playing a game in the 20s because they don't have the athletes. They don't have the horsepower. And the other thing for Tennessee, look, they lost, their offensive coordinator, Alex Golish. He took over at USF, and there sometimes can be inevitable growing pains. So if you trust that defense, you'd rather err on the side of caution and be perfectly comfortable punting, allowing Florida to go 75, 80 yards, trusting that your defense is able to make a couple of stands. And I think that's what makes this chess match so fascinating, given what this will mean in the landscape of the SEC East, where at least right now it really appears that it's Georgia and everybody else vying for that 2 slot.
And the final divisional matchup between Tennessee and Florida, because divisions are no more after this year. We'll see on Saturday. Michigan State hosting Washington. Washington minus 16.5. Todd, how weird is this game to play given all the uncertainty around a lack of a head coach and an interim coach coming in now for Michigan State?
These games are always interesting, and I wish I had more historical data to figure out exactly. Every time a head coach for a program is under the microscope for a scandal in any context, if the team plays better in his absence, or if the team goes out there, things start to get a little sideways, and it just spirals out of control. What I can tell you that we've seen as far as the betting market in this one, you've seen some under money come in. This will be Washington's first true road game. And oftentimes when you can't run the football all that well, that passing game doesn't look nearly as prolific out on the road, especially when you're traveling 3 time zones across the country. Meanwhile, for Michigan State on the other side, this probably serves as the perfect distraction. What better way than to put all that off-field stuff in the rearview mirror than to go out there and play football? And when you just look at the number here, what I think is of most interest to me, we saw Washington take money against them week 1 against Boise State. They opened up right around a 15.5 point favorite. That number closed around 2 touchdowns, and they just had way too much firepower. Here's Washington now going on the road, laying an even bigger number. It got to 17 this morning. You saw a little bit of money come in on Sparty. And for me, I think it's dog or pass in this particular spot. I'm very high on Michael Penix and everything that Kalen DeBoer has been able to do to turn this Washington offense into a juggernaut. And what I think could be a lower scoring game, seeing a contest play out in that 31-20 ballpark doesn't seem like an unreasonable request. But I'm going to be very interested to see what Noah Kim looks like when he steps up in class. This isn't Central Michigan, and this ain't Richmond. He's going to be playing come Saturday afternoon.
Todd Fuhrman with us. Bet the Board is the podcast that he hosts. We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to go rapid fire with the NFL, Todd. Week 1 versus week 2 lines. What's the adjustment like? Or typically, do you just stick with what you know about a franchise or an organization going into the season, even if it's surprising week 1 in the result?
It's kind of a catch-22 because you don't want to overreact to one data point, but you also don't want to underreact. And when I say underreact, the Seattle Seahawks probably the poster child for that. It was a team that went out there and laid an egg against the Rams. They were beaten up on the offensive line. They're not going to have Abraham Lucas, no Charles Cross this week. And that's the reason that you've seen the Lions, that would have been a 3-point favorite if this was a week 1 matchup, open as high as 5.5, 6 before they're started to show a little bit of Seahawks money. But when you pick up 1 first down in the second half against the Rams, not a ringing endorsement for the Geno Smith experience. The Chicago Bears, another team that looked anemic offensively against the Packers. That game opened at a pick. You saw immediate money coming on Tampa, but at 3, you started to see an appetite for the underdog there. So it's always interesting as these teams start to figure out who they are. And I know it's an age-old cliche in sports betting, and it applies a lot to the NFL. No team is ever as good or as bad as they appeared week 1. So bettors beware if you're buying stock at the top of the market or you're looking to sell at the bottom.
How do you feel about Jacksonville hosting Kansas City this week?
I think they get Kansas City at the wrong time. You get Travis Kelce, even if he's limited there. Chris Jones coming, you figure he's going to be on a snap count. But Andy Reid with extra time to prepare. This Kansas City Chiefs receiving core was embarrassed in that second half. Kadarius Toney most notably. You look at Mahomes, just 2 of 12 targeting wide receivers in the second half of that game. But I think what gets ignored because you lose outright at home to the Lions, they held Detroit's high-powered offense to just 14 points. And when I look at Jacksonville, I have concerns along that offensive line. I don't think that defense is drastically improved. But at 3.5, you're not stealing anything. If the number got back down to a field goal, I take a long, hard look at the Chiefs on the road.
Last minute here. Rodgers' injury changed the betting lines and futures for the Jets, that's for sure. If you're betting anything New York Jets, are you just taking the under based on the defense?
Probably the way that you want to look at it. I'm not sure I'm willing to go under this week with a total in the high 30s against Dallas, who does have a little firepower offensively. But this Cowboys defense is arguably a top 5 unit. You look at what they've been able to do since Dan Quinn took over in 2021. As far as Aaron Rodgers' absence, the betting markets responded in that 6.5 point range. I think that may be too big a mountain to go, and there may be value betting on the Jets going forward, knowing that they were actually pretty good on offense when they had a healthy Breece Hall, even with Zach Wilson's limitations last season.
What's your top play this week?
If I'm looking at the NFL, it'll be the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll buy low after that Joe Burrow performance against the Cleveland Browns. Mike Tomlin, of all people, had a pretty interesting comment saying that it was the Browns secondary when he broke down tape of that Browns-Bengals game that really made the difference there. The Ravens are banged up on the O-line. They're banged up in the defensive backfield. I'll take Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase to put up video game-like numbers. Give me the Bengals minus the field goal against the Ravens.
Todd Fuhrman is great at what he does. We just witnessed it. Todd, you're the man. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Enjoy the games this weekend.
Including his photograph critiques of us.
Oh, it's
also
absolutely fair to bring that up.
He nailed that criticism.
Absolutely. Go check out Bet the Board, the podcast with Todd Fuhrman, and all of the great wagers that he will give you advice on.
I'll go put some makeup on during the break. How about that?
You don't need a chat.
Thank you.
Michael Fabiano is next on Hot Mic.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm gonna say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Chad, how did you do in fantasy this past weekend for week 1?
Much like my gambling from this past weekend, it resulted in a big old L in fantasy football. I've got a fantasy dilemma I'm going to ask our guest about later on that I am very definitive and I'm rarely this decisive in a move to bench a guy that I drafted to be the starter this quickly. But I'm definitive in doing this, at least for this week. I'm interested. I'll ask our guest what he thinks.
Michael Fabiano joins us, the fantasy football expert for Sports Illustrated. Michael, great to have you back on, man. Hope things are well.
All good, my friends. My Cowboys whipped up on the Giants, and I went 12-3 in my fantasy league, so a good week 1.
12-3 is excellent. There's one of the managers here at 6th and Peabody, at our studio. He told me he was up 46 points going into Sunday Night Football. His opponent had the Dallas defense. Then they went into Monday night, and he was still up something. I don't know how much. But the final kick for Buffalo, off the upright, the 50-yarder, beat him. Oh. He lost by 1.
So those are the worst ones to lose. Like, I'd rather lose by 100 than get beat by a couple of points, especially on a late kick on Monday Night Football. But yeah, the Cowboys defense was fantastic against the Giants, in some leagues scoring in excess of 30 or 40 points. And now we get Zach Wilson coming up this weekend. So as you can imagine, start the Cowboys defense.
Chad, I want to hear who you're contemplating benching, and whatever Michael tells you, you're going to do, right? If he says it's stupid, you're going to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we'll get into more of your start versus sit guys later. But this is one I want to ask you about. It is involving those Cowboys you just mentioned. Dak Prescott did nothing in that game, and he didn't have to do anything because his defense and his running game did everything for him. I am sitting him this week and starting Jordan Love at quarterback against the Falcons. Is that the right play?
I honestly, I don't hate it. I don't think that you're out of line at all. The Jets defense is really good. They turned over Josh Allen 4 times. He scored 9 points, which is awful for Josh Allen. Jordan Love looked really good. Christian Watson was back at a limited practice on Friday, so maybe he comes back. But I got to be honest with you, I can't argue against that. I mean, Dak Prescott's a good fantasy quarterback. He's not a great fantasy quarterback, and he is certainly not a guy who's not subject to the matchups. He is. And the Jets defense is pretty phenomenal.
And I'm shocked that my idea is aligned with Michael's here. So I'm absolutely starting Jordan Love this week. I felt good about it before.
12-3.
Now I feel great about it.
Let's get to the Fabs 5. And this week, Michael, with Michael Fabiano, top 5 fantasy performances not to overreact to, good or bad. Let's just start with the bad, and at quarterback with Joe Burrow.
It was terrible. 3.5 points. Not a great. I mean, every Bengal for the most part was bad. Only Joe Mixon scored more than 10 points, and he had 10.1. And you're talking about an offense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins who had no points. but he'll bounce back. The Ravens defense is not great against the pass. Their secondary is vulnerable. So I think Burrow bounces back. Don't worry about the stinker last week. I think he is a guy that you have to start.
Dan Campbell says Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be unleashed moving forward. Do you buy it based on his usage in week 1?
I don't know what the definition of unleashed is, but David Montgomery is pretty damn good. And so when you look at the snaps and the touches from last week, it was all Montgomery. Will Gibbs see more work moving forward? I'm sure he will. And he's got a good matchup against Seattle this week, and I would play him. But he's never going to be an elite fantasy running back while sharing the workload, especially losing third down snaps to David Montgomery because of his pass protection. He's going to be a very good PPR running back, maybe an RB2, but he'll never be elite while David Montgomery is out there producing the way that he produced in week 1.
While Chad may be benching Dak Prescott, you're saying don't overreact to Josh Allen's performance against the Jets D.
Yeah, and you know what? This kind of goes back to last year. He's turning the ball over too much.
Yeah.
And I think he knows it. And everyone's going to think, well, he misses Brian Daboll, and that may very well be the case. He's got the Raiders this week, and the Bills are going to be a little bit salty. So Josh Allen's not a guy that I'm even thinking about sitting. He'd have to have 3 or 4 similar games before I'm thinking something's wrong with him. Maybe I got to start playing the matchups. Right now, Josh Allen needs to be in your lineups.
So if I had Josh Allen and not Dak Prescott, you would not tell me to start Jordan Love over him, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Josh Allen's at another
Just being
level.
clear. Good.
From the good performances, there will be several fantasy football owners that will be launching these wide receivers into starting lineups because they definitely weren't starting in week 1. Nakua out in L.A., how do you respond based on the performance by him with Stafford?
He was fantastic. No one saw that coming.
Right.
I mean, even Tutu Atwell had a really good game.
Yeah.
You know, Tutu and Puka. Listen, they could sell shirts in LA with those guys. Am I starting them against the Niners, though? I mean, I don't know about that. I think he could be chasing the points. Was he worth an ad off the waiver wire? Absolutely. He should be owned across the board right now. But the matchup's not great. And when you look at Seattle's defense, they gave it up to perimeter receivers last year, and they did it again in week 1. So am I surprised that he had such a big stat line? Yeah, I am. There was a lot of targets going his way, too. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Certainly worth a roster spot. Probably not more than a flex this week against the Niners.
Kendrick Bourne as well.
Huge game. And they've got Miami this week. And that's a good matchup for the Patriot wide receivers. Remember, the Patriots did not have an offensive coordinator last year. Now they have Bill O'Brien. Maybe that's good news for Mac Jones. I think it certainly wasn't bad in week 1. Mac Jones had a nice game, and so did Kendrick Bourne. Do I expect this kind of production on a weekly basis? No. I mean, there was no Devontae Parker last week. Would I start Kendrick Bourne this week if he's a cheap play? Potentially a guy picked up off the wire if I need help. Maybe one of my wide receivers is banged up. Jacoby Myers isn't going to play this week. He's certainly worth a look, but I think you got to temper your expectations when a wide receiver who's not really been consistently productive from a statistical perspective puts up a big number like that. You always have to temper your expectations, but at least he's worth a roster spot right now.
Let's go positive now, Michael. Let's get into some guys that you would start this week. We saw Jared Goff make some big-time throws in that Thursday Night Football win in Kansas City. Is he a guy that you're playing this week?
No question. Last year, he averaged about 21 points a game at home. He was one of the 3 or 4 best home quarterbacks in fantasy football. Seattle's defense is not great against quarterbacks. We saw that last week. Stafford beat him for over 300 yards. So Goff is, I'd like to make the comparison that he seems to turn into Joe Montana at home, and on the road, he's, I guess, more like Ryan Leaf, or maybe not that bad, but you get the gist. From a fantasy perspective, he's a very tough player to start on the road. At home, go get him. Start Jared Goff.
DeAndre Swift last night was phenomenal. James Cook in week 1, pretty good. You're starting him as well.
It's all about the matchup here with the Raiders, who struggle against the run. And James Cook got the majority of the snaps and the touches for the Buffalo Bills last week. So he's in a good spot to succeed at the running back position. Same thing with Rachaad White. Now, Rachaad White did not put up a great stat line, but what are we looking for in fantasy? Yeah, we want points, but we also want opportunities. We want snaps played, and we want touches. And Rachaad White got both. The problem was that it just didn't equate to fantasy, but it's a better matchup this week against the Bears. This is a defense that's given up 25 touchdowns and the second most points to running back since last year.
Mike Williams comes to Nashville, Chargers receiver facing the Titans. You're starting him as well.
Titans are awful against perimeter receivers. Dating back to last year, no team has given up more fantasy points to that position. This is a big week for Keenan Allen. He's very obvious, but Mike Williams coming off a bad week should be in a lot of starting lineups for fantasy managers against, again, a very vulnerable Titans defense. And keep in mind, this is a game where Austin Eckler might not play. He didn't practice all week. And so the Chargers may be looking at throwing the ball a little bit more with their stud running back potentially out.
And a great Titans run defense as well.
Really good against the run. Really bad against the pass.
And you like David Njoku. And just overall, are you starting to buy that Browns offense based on what they were able to do against Cincinnati in week 1? I know they didn't have to do much, only giving up the 3 points. But what do you think about that offense overall and Njoku in particular?
I'm not saying they're going to turn into the Air Coryell Chargers from back in the 80s, but certainly was a step in the right direction. And Watson had a good game, better game than I thought, because the matchup was not great. But David Njoku, tight end is impossible to predict these days. It really is. When you look at the top 12 guys, which are the 12 best players, and who would have been tight end ones, we're looking at like the Adam Troutmans of the world. It's like, how do you predict these guys doing that kind of thing? Njoku has been very good against the Steelers. 3 straight games with over 12 fantasy points. So I'm going with the trend of Njoku having success against Pittsburgh, and that's why I'm starting him. I'm also starting him because, well, there's just not a lot of great options at tight end.
Those are the Fab 5 startums. And to the situms. You already agree with Chad with Dak Prescott. And a couple of running backs as well that you're telling fantasy football owners to sit on the bench this week.
Right. Cam Akers, I was wrong about him. I think we all were last week. Sean McVay hates Cam Akers, or he hates our fantasy teams, or both. I don't know. Yeah. But Kyron Williams dominated him in snaps. Now, Akers had more touches, but he didn't do anything with him. He averaged 1.3 yards per carry. It was terrible. And it was a great matchup, and now he's got the Niners. So no thank you. I don't want Akers. I don't want Kyron Williams either this week. And Khalil Herbert, who I like, I'm not giving up on him yet, but I do not like the usage from last week. It was a 3-headed monster. And Roshan Johnson ended up being the best Bears running back out of the trio. The Buccaneers defense also pretty tough against the run. So I would beware Khalil Herbert in that game in Tampa.
Why are you sitting Terry McLaurin this week against the I forgot who they're playing all of a sudden.
They're playing the Denver Broncos.
Thank you.
And,
yes.
I mean, that's part of the reason why the matchup's not great. I know Jacoby Myers had a good game against them last week, but dating back to last year, the Broncos have been really tough on wide receivers, giving up just 6 touchdowns and the 4th fewest points to perimeter receivers. So that concerns me about Terry McLaurin. He's a flex starter this week, probably. And then Kyle Pitts, geez Louise. I don't know when I'm going to be able to tell people to start him. And it's not about Kyle Pitts. The offense just throws the ball so little. And when the throws actually do make it out of the hands of their quarterbacks, whether it's Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota last year, they're not very accurate.
Yeah.
And so Kyle Pitts and Drake London both, I don't know if I can trust them against Green Bay this weekend. That Atlanta offense is going to run, even if they're losing. They just keep running the ball.
Curious on 2 players coming back from injury. Darren Waller with the Giants and Jerry Jeudy with the Broncos.
Mm-hmm. Darren Waller should be in every lineup while he's healthy. The Cardinals are awful against tight ends, and they have been for most of the last few years. But I would say this. Darren Waller has a good game or two. I may be looking to sell high because I'm worried about that hamstring flaring up later on in the season. Jerry Jeudy, I'd probably sit back and wait on him this week unless I'm really desperate at wide receiver. The Commanders' defense is not bad. Let's put it that way. They're really good against the run. That's why I don't love Javonte Williams this week. I don't really factor in the quote-unquote snap counts. I mean, we saw snap counts last week from Romeo Doubs, 2 touchdowns. Breece Hall had a big game on a snap count, so I'm not really concerned about that so much. But the Broncos' offense just didn't look great to me in week 1. So Judy's probably going to be a guy you're going to be starting most of the time moving forward. But if you have depth at wide receiver or maybe a running back you can flex, I may sit him this week.
So, Michael, I realize it's the best of a bad choice type situation. I'm in a 16-team league, so I drafted tight end very late, and I'm not in a great spot right now. And I'll make the move right here with you on Dalton Kincaid against Vegas or Zach Ertz against the Giants at tight end. They're both projected to have right around the same amount of points. Who would you favor?
You know which tight end had the most targets in the league last week?
It wasn't.
Ertz.
But I say it wasn't Dalton Kincaid because I started.
Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz in his last 9 games against the Giants is averaging about 18 points a game. I'm not saying he's going to do that. That was when he was with the Eagles, but he's had success against New York. And so I tend to think because Joshua Dobbs is not a guy who's going to take chances downfield, because 100% of Zach Ertz's passes thrown to him were catchable last week. You know why? All intermediate stuff, short stuff. I'll take Zach Ertz over Dalton Kincaid. It's close, but I like the veteran.
We have just 15 seconds here. Of the 12-3 record, how many of your teams have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback?
None. I don't trust the Jets when it comes to quarterbacks. I didn't want him. It is the most predictable curse in the history of sports.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with Jets quarterbacks.
I had Rodgers, and I still won, but I'm not going to have a winning season. The quarterbacks are awful of my options. Michael Fabiano is not with anything regarding the visits here of fantasy football. Michael, we enjoy this each week. We appreciate you.
Take care, guys. Good luck.
Michael_Fabiano is where you can follow him for advice. Same goes for Andy Staples. We preview the top college football games across the country next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Just like that, the second hour is here of the Friday edition. It's already the weekend. We declare it.
It started yesterday. It's
Thursday
not
night
just Friday. Thursday afternoon. Right around 2 o'clock Central Time, when we go on air, Hutton.
Yeah.
Thursday afternoons. I think that's a fair time to declare it the weekend.
I'm with you.
Thursday night football.
Totally fine with
the
that.
voice, the sound of Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit calling a game right after that. I mean, it's the weekend.
6th and Peabody certainly feels that way as the weekend builds on
There's
Thursdays and
a
Fridays.
reverberation in the walls here on Fridays at 6th and Peabody with the amount of people outside of the studio.
Yeah, and the consumption of Yeehaw beer and Old
Yes.
Smoky Moonshine. Andy Staples joins us on 3's College Football Insider. You can follow him on social at Andy_Staples, and absolutely check him out on YouTube. Reacting to all of the games and the show each and every weekday night is phenomenal. Andy, thanks for the time, man. Hope things are well.
It's going good, guys. Happy Friday.
Absolutely. Let's just start with the 7 p.m. game tomorrow evening with Tennessee and Florida. It's a game that means a ton for both programs. Chad has mentioned Tennessee this season defines the floor for Josh Heupel. He could explain if he wants. But then you've also got a big game for Napier in the Swamp.
Yeah, it's huge for both programs, and it's interesting because it's not always like this in a situation where you've got one program that's had a couple of good years where they're very satisfied with where they are, and one that is clearly in a rebuilding stage and the fan base is not satisfied at all. But it's important to Tennessee, and you still have like a lot of nerves among the Tennessee fan base. I don't know how the players feel about this necessarily, but a lot of nerves among the Tennessee fan base because Tennessee hasn't won in Gainesville in 20 years. And it feels like they're snake bit because either they have a better team and something weird happens and they lose, or they don't have the better team and they just get smoked. Like, it's just been a house of horrors for them for the past 10 times they've been here. So they've got to get that part. It's almost like lifting a curse more than anything else. And then on the Florida side, this is a game where at the end of it, we're going to know if the fan base is still there for the rest of 2023 or checked out, and they'll come back and see you in 2024. Like, if Florida is competitive, like obviously if Florida wins, they're going to be feeling good. The Swamp will be rocking. Everything will be cool. If Florida loses, but they're competitive and it's close, that's probably fine too. If Tennessee comes in here and blows Florida's doors off, I got a feeling it's going to get pretty apathetic pretty quick, and that's not a place you want to be. Like, I don't think Billy Napier's in any danger because just having covered Florida for a long time, like the idea of them paying a $31 million buyout is just not in their nature. So I can't imagine them doing anything like that. But the problem is if everybody checks out on you and everybody feels like there's no upward trajectory, then you got to start worrying about losing recruits, that sort of thing. Like, because if Billy Napier can keep his 2024 recruiting class together, there's a good chance they're going to be fine going forward. But it's not a patient fan base. It's not a patient sport. And they got to have some reasons for hope sprinkled in. This feels like the best chance at a reason for hope against a rival team because, against Georgia, it's going to be harder than this. Against LSU, it could be harder than this. Against Florida State, it's going to be harder than this.
And Andy, from the Tennessee perspective, we all expected them to be 2-0 going into this game, and that's where they are. But they kind of stumble around offensively, sleepwalk through a game against Austin Peay. They were lethargic at times in the first half against Virginia. They haven't really taken any shots down the field. Josh Heupel this week says some of that's by design, situationally, not to show too much, but other times it's what the defense is giving. This just looks like a very different Josh Heupel Tennessee team in that so far the defense looks legit, getting after the quarterback and stopping the run, and the offense looks like it might take 3 or 4 weeks to get on track at this point, but yet they have that running game they had last year, maybe even a little bit better. What is this Tennessee team, I guess, is my question.
I do tend to believe them in saying that they're trying to be a little bit vanilla on offense. They didn't need to be anything but vanilla on offense to win the first 2 games. So if you've been saving some stuff for this week, then great. I think that's probably good. Whether that's true or not is another story. I mean, Joe Milton was a little off target early in that Austin Peay game. And really, I think what Florida's chances come down to is Joe Milton accurate. If he's spraying the ball all over the place, there's a chance Florida can get the ball back, maybe control time of possession, tempo, that sort of thing, or get turnovers and get a short field and take advantage of it that way. But if Joe Milton's accurate, Tennessee should be able to win this game, in fairly convincing fashion. Because you mentioned the D-line. They're very fast off the edge. That group has been probably one of the more pleasant surprises. You're now, granted, consider the competition. But when Florida played Utah, which was not at full strength, remember, Utah's defensive line had its way with Florida's offensive line. Now, Florida gets their center back, as does Tennessee, but Florida's offensive line is going to have to be a lot better than they were against Utah to give Graham Mertz time and to maybe make some yards for the backs, because Florida's best chance in this game, in terms of not just capitalizing on Tennessee mistakes, but the way Florida can just go out and proactively win the game is control the ball on the ground, gain 5 yards of carry on the ground. The backs are the best position group on Florida's team. The question is whether the line can open things up for them.
Andy Staples with us from On 3. I don't know what we're going to learn about Colorado on Saturday night, but we're about to learn more with their upcoming schedule at Oregon and then back home against USC. What do you make of the first 3 weeks so far, and just knowing that game day and big noon kickoff are in Boulder?
I have been very impressed on the football side with the way they've played, because my thing was Deion's going to work long term because he's good at acquiring talent and he's good at motivating people and he seems to be good at hiring staffs. The thing is, I didn't know that they would be able to initially compete the way they are, because it is hard to get good big people out of the portal. And I was listening to Deion and Pat McAfee show today, and he was directly talking to offensive line recruits saying, hey, we need you. And I think they've done a good job disguising any limitations they might have through scheme. The thing is, they're so good at the skill positions, they can do that against most teams. Maybe they can against Oregon and USC, but I got a feeling they're going to be able to score on them a little bit too. So I'm very excited to see what they can be, because I went into the season saying if Deion wins 4 or 5 games this season, build a statue.
Yeah.
I think they're a bowl team for sure after what I've seen the first 2 weeks. And then we'll see if they're competitive in the Pac-12. At this point, I'm not willing to put anything past them. I want to see them against those. Like, we'll know exactly what they are after Oregon and USC. But it's one of those things, if they go out and lose those games, you're going to have a lot of people go, oh, I told you Deion wasn't any good. No. They were supposed to get beat by 50 in those games. Anything better than that is progress. And if they're competitive in those games, Katie bar the door. They're going to be awesome next year.
Well, Andy, think about the portal impact a year from now, what his roster could look like. And I think the perception of him has been, well, he's in the portal, but he's not a threat. He's at Jackson State or he's at Colorado. It's going to take some time. They're about to piss off a lot of fan bases at the top of college
It's not
football.
even the portal. The place you have to worry about them is if you have a 2024 class that you like and players in the 2024 class you like, because he can go in and say, look at how many freshmen we play.
Yeah.
Look at how they contribute. Come be that person now. Be the Travis Hunter of 2023. Be the Dylan Edwards of 2024. Be the Dylan Edwards of 2024. He's going to be able to make that promise, and he's not BSing. Like, they have eyes. They can see. Especially, you think about if you're like a ready-made offensive tackle, there are very few of those. They only go to a few schools. But if Deion Sanders, who is not your typical football coach, because he's Deion freaking Sanders, comes in and says, listen, you could start next year for us. You're going to have to sit 2 years here. There's a chance somebody might listen to that. So I'd be worried more about them taking your recruiting class than them taking your guys through the portal.
How weird do things get at LSU if they go to Starkville and lose and start 1-2? Because even after that Florida State game, Andy, you know the line on Brian Kelly. Hey, solid coach, can't win in the big moments, doesn't win the big games. And now if in year 2 with all this expectation, they're a 9.5-point favorite, I think, on the road. But if they were to lose this game, what would that look like for LSU and that fan base?
Oh, I mean, listen, the call-in shows would be spectacular. Any call-in show after an LSU loss is amazing, but after the second consecutive loss to an FBS team, that would be just off the charts. And here's the deal with Brian Kelly. I feel like the fan base sort of hugs Brian Kelly at arm's length. You've seen that awkward hug where you have your arms all the way out and you're trying really not to get that close to that person. That is how they probably feel about Brian Kelly. It's like, yeah, we want him to come win games for us. We're not sure how we actually feel about him. That would turn. Like they would actually feel pretty angry toward him at that point. Now, winning the SEC West last year bought him quite a bit of credibility, but I don't think any of them liked the way the Florida State game went or the way he handled it after the Florida State game. I don't think they appreciated that. Though we must have thought we were Georgia or something. Like they did not like the way he handled that. And Notre Dame fans were like, "We told you. That's who he is." So he's got to get that together. Now, here's the thing. Most Brian Kelly teams, be they Notre Dame or LSU, with the exception of 2016, did fix mistakes like this, did fix things. And that's exactly what they did last year after they lost to Florida State. So I wouldn't be shocked if they come in and look supremely competent against Mississippi State. I picked Mississippi State to cover, not necessarily win, just because 9.5 in a home game is a huge number. But I wouldn't be shocked if LSU is competent enough to go in here and win this game.
So you mentioned Notre Dame. I have to ask. Tommy Rees is going with his guy he's got familiarity with in Tyler Buckner for Alabama. Andy, are you surprised that Jalen Milroe, 2 weeks into the season, is out for now as the starting quarterback? And what do you think of this move for Alabama's offense?
I'm not surprised because it didn't seem like they were really all that enamored of anybody. And the way they called the game suggests they weren't all in on Jalen Milroe. If you're all in on Jalen Milroe, who is the best athlete on the field most of the time, you're running a ton of design quarterback run. You're doing a lot of read option with him. They weren't doing that. They weren't taking advantage of the things he's good at. And what's interesting is you had Jalen Milroe, who does move around a lot in the pocket, kind of walking himself into pressure a lot of the time. You'd see the offensive lineman kind of look back and like, you're not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be blocking right here. Why are you here? And so I think they probably looked at it and said, okay, let's go with a guy who fits in the offense we're trying to run a little bit better. I don't know if that's going to work either. Now, you've got a gauntlet coming up of SEC games. Get it. You better get it figured out here in Tampa against USF, whether it's Tyler Buckner, whether it's back to Milroe, whether it's Ty Simpson, whatever you want to do, you need to figure it out, because if you don't know by the time you get into the Ole Miss game next week, life can come at you pretty fast.
Andy, what do you make of what Michigan State has done with Harlan Barnett and then adding Mark D'Antonio, who comes back as the assistant head coach? He's going to wear a headset on Saturday as they host Washington. We've got about a minute and a half left.
I think it's a good move. I mean, Harlan Barnett, if you think back to what Auburn did with Cadillac Williams, this is a very similar move in terms of an interim coach, an alum who loves the place, loves the job, loves the players.
Dream job, yeah.
Yeah. So he's gonna do everything he can to succeed. The players are gonna do everything they can to help him succeed. And then you got Mark D'Antonio, who obviously loves the place and who is a very good organizer and can help him and be a sounding board for him. So as bad as the situation is with them suspending Mel Tucker, this is probably the best move for the rest of the season, because you don't lose any play calling ability. You bring in some organizational help, and you've got a guy who might be able to inspire them to have a good season.
Andy, I love the backyard brawl as an idea, as a concept. I love this rivalry, the fan bases, the proximity, everything. I'm having a hard time getting that excited about these two teams, though, in this game this year. Should I be finding a way to get excited for this game?
Just be excited because it's a weird-ass game. It's always a weird-ass.
That's
like
true.
Last year, West Virginia is going to salt the game away, and a ball that is thrown directly to Bryce Ford Wheaton goes through his hands and lands in the hands of a Pittsburgh corner who returns it for a pick six, and all of a sudden Pitt's in control. Like, it was bizarre and wild, and this stuff always happens in that series. So that's what you get excited about. Don't worry about how good in general, globally, these two teams are. Just encapsulate the mood in Morgantown, have yourself psychically have a Tudor's biscuit and enjoy the game.
Embrace the weird is what you're saying. Embrace the
Exactly.
weird.
Burn a couch.
Hey, final thoughts. Just Allard making his first true road start in the conference against Illinois for Penn State. Are you high on the Nittany Lions?
I picked them to make the playoffs, so yeah.
Okay.
And this is a game that'll tell us whether I'm going to be right or wrong. Because
Chad's on board with that too.
Yeah, this is one of those games like in the Sean Clifford era, I could see them kind of going in there, messing around. Maybe they win by 3 or 6 or whatever. If Drew Aller is truly the upgrade that we think he is at quarterback, they go in there and cruise. We'll find out. There's good players on that Illinois defense. They got the law firm. They got Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph. Like, they got some dudes. So we'll see what they can do.
Andy Staples is great at what he does. On3's college football analyst and insider. On3.com is where you can catch his show as well as YouTube. Hey, enjoy the ballet that you're headed to coming up, right? And then football all weekend.
Well, no, it's me sitting in the parking lot waiting for ballet class to end, getting work done, answering emails. So if you email me this week and I didn't email you back, you're gonna get a response in about an hour.
I know that life.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for responding and coming on the show, man. We love it.
Thanks, guys.
Andy Staples there. Great analysis. Chad, when we come back, let's dive in to some college football headlines and also some prove-it moments for coaches this weekend, starting tomorrow. That's straight ahead. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network.
Speaking of whacked out, I don't understand this. I don't know why you do this, but Colorado State head coach Norvell decided he was going to take a shot. He was going to take a shot at Deion Sanders. Now, look, I don't blame you. You got to do what you got to do. And, of course, Ryan Clark on Twitter said, well, it's racist. Everything's racist. Jay Norvell said, I take my sunglasses and my hat off when I'm talking to adults. That's what my mother taught me. Well, Ryan Clark said, well, is that insinuating that Deion's mother didn't teach that? Ryan Clark's an idiot. But this guy might be a bigger idiot, or he might be an evil genius. Let's hear from him. Yeah, well, good for you, man. Good for you. I'll tell you why it's good for you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we got us a situation in Boulder this weekend. Game day is there. High noon is there. Fox is there. It's going to be glorious. And this just made me stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning. I think the game starts like at 10 o'clock our time. Look, you can acquiesce to this guy. I mean, what is this guy? He's won 2 college football games. I know he's the greatest to ever play. Good, that's a long time ago. A lot of guys are the greatest to ever play their position a long time ago. So good for Jay Norvell. Good for him, but I will tell you something. I guarantee you this, and this is a take you will not hear from anybody else. The black kids on his team are going, yeah? Really? I like Deion. I think Deion's kind of cool. I'd like to play for Deion. Seriously. I mean, as soon as I heard that, I go, hey, man, you won your little show here, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the game. But the kids on your own team are like, hey, man, I think Deion's pretty cool. This guy here, Norvell, reminds me of every high school, grade school, CYO coach I ever had. I'm telling you. That's what the kids on his team are thinking. That's exactly what the kids on his team are thinking. They are. Don't at me about it either. Here's Deion's response.
Yes, sir. Talk to him, Jimmy. Talk to him, Jimmy. Y'all know after the last game. Come on, Craig. Y'all know after the last one. You don't even know. You don't even know.
Yeah, well, Deion Sanders is full of shit. I mean, let's just be honest right here. He's full of crap. Because all they do, his son did, he's done, is talk about the other team. Like, we don't talk about nobody. You're full of crap. Look at what his son said after the game. Matt rule this, Matt rule that.
Show is flying by on the Friday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Are you in the chat today, Chad?
Oh, yeah. I'm always in the chat, Hutton. I live in that chat.
Fair enough.
I
Yes,
go to
you are.
bed in that chat. I snuggle
You
up
never
to
log
that
out.
chat. I'm just right there. I put a pillow in it, and I go to sleep every night to that chat.
Chad, victory last night for the Eagles over the Vikings. Vikings sent to 0-2. Meanwhile, Philly is 2-0, and they haven't played all that well offensively. But keep in mind what they didn't do well a year ago. Specifically, that they lose the Super Bowl by 3 points. They score 35, and they did it with virtually no rushing attack. They have fixed that. DeAndre Swift, virtually silent in week 1, has a career-high 175 yards last night, the most yards put up by an Eagles running back in a game since 2013. It's been a while. LaShawn McCoy was that running back. And now Swift is there, and he looked awesome. Jump cuts, quick pace, fighting for the extra yards. It's exactly what they wanted him to do in Detroit. I will say, the big test comes, and they were critical of him in Detroit about this. Are you injured or are you hurt? Because he would be on the sidelines quite a bit over the last couple of seasons there, and that's something that we heard the coaching staff and the GM discuss. So that's the next moment for him in Philly. But last night's moment was huge, and he ran with a purpose. They need that out of the backfield more than just Jalen Hurts. And Hurts, by the way, his 9th game of at least 2 touchdowns plus. And that's second most in NFL history to Cam Newton's 10.
And that's crazy, that stat, because he's just not been as good as he was a year ago through 2 weeks.
So far, you're right.
So I'm with you. That running game is fixed with the Eagles. Now if they could just get Jalen Hurts playing the way Jalen Hurts played last year, before he went down with injury, he was the likely MVP of the league. And then he missed some time with that injury late last season. If he can get back playing that way, this Eagles team is going to be just as great as we all expected. But regardless, they sit here at 2-0, and they've not gotten anywhere near the best out of Jalen Hurts yet. But I'm with you, Hutton. That running game looks great through 2 weeks.
2-0, and their schedule sets up very well if you're an Eagles fan. They're on the road next Monday night against the Buccaneers. Then they will host the Commanders. Chad, then they go on the road against the Rams. And then they're on the road against the Jets. Those are the next 4 games. Bucs, Commanders, Rams, Jets. We're seeing another opening run by Philadelphia. It
Could be a
feels that
while
way.
before they take their first mark in that right-hand column for an L this season. That's what it looks like.
Chad, it's a big prove-it moment for 2 second-year SEC coaches tomorrow.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it with Andy Staples, but for Billy Napier at Florida and Brian Kelly at LSU, this is Prove It Saturday for both those guys to different degrees. At Florida with Billy Napier, at Florida, you were truly judged by that fan base on 4 games every year. Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Florida State. Billy Napier was 0-4 in those games in year 1. This is his best opportunity for a win in any of those games this year. They go to Baton Rouge this season. I don't think they're beating Florida State this year. I certainly don't believe they're beating Georgia and Jacksonville this year. This is probably his best chance to get to 1-7 in those games through 2 seasons. At home against Tennessee this Saturday night. Andy Staples, he's a Florida grad, and he said it. There's going to be a ton of apathy if they go in and don't look good and lose by multiple scores to this Tennessee team. It's going to settle in quickly. Win this game, and you're talking trash about a rival, and you're excited again, and you're fine. Everything's good for Florida. But I do think that this is a huge possible statement-making game for Billy Napier about his early tenure at Florida. No, I don't think that they're going to do anything with him this year in year 2, but it's big for that fan base to have buy-in. And when you get buy-in from the fan base, it means you're getting buy-in from the players for everything. To go in and win at home Saturday night, that atmosphere is going to be jacked up and ready to go. You got to give them something to cheer for early, And if they can win that game, that's a big moment for Billy Napier. The other second-year coach I'm looking at is Brian Kelly, because Andy's right when he says that fan base wasn't excited about his post-game comments. They certainly weren't excited about what they saw in the second half of that game against Florida State, where the Tigers just got blown out. They got their doors blown off in that game. No one was expecting that. They were expecting a good, close game. They lose the first test. They put up 72 points against Grambling. Just move on from that. But now they go on the road, almost a double-digit favorite at Mississippi State. Zach Arnett, first full season as the head coach at Mississippi State. This is a big test for Brian Kelly and how they go in there and play this game. LSU's the better team. LSU's the more explosive team. They need to win this game going away. If not, I think it could get weird for Brian Kelly at LSU, much like Billy Napier at Florida. So while this isn't do or die, it's a big moment for both these coaches. I'll put a third one on the list. He's not in his second year. He's been there longer than that. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. He's got a chance for a huge win. A huge win if they can beat 15th-ranked K-State. Hutton, we'll get in my top 10 games later. Everything I see statistically in this game does not lead me to believe that Missouri is going to have a chance in this one against K-State. Maybe Eli proves us all wrong, but I don't see it for Missouri.
Chad, you know my saying here, my line.
It's not if you lose, it's how you lose.
Napier could be in trouble. Staples mentioned the buyout. Florida is no different than many college football programs. Fan bases eat their own quickly. And it certainly happened with Mullen. The last coaching search, as I recall, Luke Fickell was their primary target. The problem of the timing of that is Fickell was at Cincinnati and they were going to the college football playoff. They were right in it, and they were there. And he's not leaving to take that job and distracting any opportunity. So he didn't do it. The others that were mentioned, Bob Stoops and Matt Campbell. Then it was Napier that was surfaced, and it was really because LSU didn't want him. They didn't want to hire Louisiana Lafayette's coach at Louisiana State.
Yep.
And we know the rest is history, where he ends up at Florida and took over a program that he was tasked with getting the bad out off the roster, and now he's just getting to a point where he can actually recruit the players that he wants there.
Yeah, and sort of known as like a real straight edge, good guy, like nice guy to people, good program builder.
You had the
but there's zero
Rashada issue.
Not a lot that's going to get you excited, as a fan. But this isn't Steve Spurrier coming in with a visor and leading the pass-happy Florida Gators back in the 90s. It's a very different style coach.
I just say be careful what you wish for, because what coach is going there right now?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And again, I don't think he's in trouble. I just think if you lose this, your fans are just not excited about anything that they've seen so far from Billy Napier at Florida. They got a good recruiting class, it looks like, for this upcoming cycle. But there's just not a lot to really grab hold of. This would be something to grab hold of, because Tennessee, they haven't been at it for a long time with Josh Heupel. This is just going to be the third game of year 3 for Josh Heupel, but they've developed a pretty clear identity.
Yes.
As a team that is exciting to watch. The culture seems to be good. That's the difference. If we're looking at this from the Tennessee perspective, Butch Jones should have won 4 straight against Florida. They choked in the swamp twice. Once on giving up a Hail Mary to Felipe Franks on the last play of the game. The other time on a 4th and 12, I think it was, they give up a 62-yard touchdown on 4th and 12 to Will Greer, where they had the game in hand. And those games were just squeezed to death by Butch Jones because he was scared, he played not to lose, and his team took on that personality.
Tight.
That is one thing I will say for Tennessee. There may be some sort of karmic injustice with Tennessee in the swamp that seeps in with the players. It ain't coming from the coach in this game. He's not going to play scared. Josh Heupel loves big games. He goes into these games loose, ready to go. So far, his teams have played that way. I don't think they're going down there afraid. I don't think Josh Heupel is going to play this thing afraid. I think he's going to play it like he does every big game. Him and his staff, they love the big moment. They love difficult environments to go play in. They love the big game. We've seen that time and time again. So if there's an issue in this game, I think it's because offensive coordinator change mixed with a quarterback that maybe just doesn't have it with this offense. We'll find out. I'm not giving up on Joe Milton or anything yet, but that would be the case. It's not because the coach is going in scared. And I do think Tennessee, on paper, is the better team in this matchup, but we haven't seen Tennessee look great yet this season. They did their job against Virginia, and the offense, after a couple of early offensive possessions where they looked out of sorts, just sort of gave up on throwing the ball down the field. They're going to have to do something down the field against SEC competition, and it starts this Saturday in Gainesville.
Chad, post-game last night, Alexander Mattison, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings, received hate messages, racial slurs were used on Instagram, death threats, and other language that he has since screenshotted and put on his Instagram story that the Vikings and the NFL both responded to with statements denouncing this. It includes messages of, and they claim to be Vikings fans based on how they phrase things, but one includes if you know how to hold onto a gun and pull the trigger, and another one uses language that you can imagine and says, learn how to hold onto the ball. This team is 2-0 with Dalvin Cook, and other awful language that is screenshotted with his responses saying this is not okay. You might wonder why people post this. Check this out. And then has the message in response. Again, we discussed in the first segment, if we're going to actually find out who they are and investigate this, he's put screenshots out of the post itself.
Yeah, stop redacting who it is. I want look. It's Madison's prerogative on this, but I see the egg profile picture on it. I want to know who's behind this account.
Well, the account
if we're
has 20
going to get to
followers.
the bottom of this stuff, but I'm sure it's someone's just account they use to post stupid stuff on the side. Well, who's doing it? I want to know the person, the individual who's doing it. Let's out this person.
Well, I hope Instagram or Facebook help do that.
You can get to the bottom of it. Like there should be professional repercussions.
Yes.
For going after someone's DMs and posting stupid bleep like this. And the only way to do that is to publicly out the person that's doing this.
Yeah.
So I want to know who's behind it. It's easy to put an anonymous Twitter profile up with no photo and then just go send awful things to people. It's less easy when you show the actual human being behind it that's doing it. That's what I want to know now. Who's doing this? Let's see it.
Yeah, it's awful.
Because it's terrible. But the only way to stop it is people see real-life examples of, oh, man, I maybe shouldn't send racist stuff to football players because this person did it and they lost their job because they did it. Maybe I should think twice before sending stuff like that. I think it would help get rid of some of it.
Chad, also stupid, Keith Olbermann, and his response whenever Aaron Rodgers went down with the eventually it was the Achilles, but at the time, everyone's playing doctor on social media, and he retweeted one of the doctors that said it could be a Liz Frank foot injury as well. Olbermann retweeted and posted another hashtag sudden Liz Frank due to failure to vaccinate. Well, Rodgers went on Pat McAfee and responded to Olbermann.
Hey, hold on, there's another guy. What's the guy? Keith Olbermann said that.
You love him, though.
Because you're not vaxxed, that's why it happened.
Yep.
Yeah, get your 5th booster, Keith.
Anyway.
Bomb.
He didn't hold back. And Rodgers is back on with McAfee.
Get your 5th booster, Keith, is terrific. Perfect way to handle that.
I'm sure he has.
Aaron Rodgers said a lot in his head on McAfee, too. He said, don't expect him to be on the sideline anytime soon with the recovery, but that he's hoping to get up in a booth. And he joked that I hope they give me a headset so I can at least give a few plays, call a few plays over the game with what I'm seeing. Seemed to be in relatively good spirits given the circumstances.
If he's on headset.
But a great line about Keith Olbermann, who has just become a complete and total caricature
Yeah, he's
and just a loser. I don't.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
He's playing into it too.
Keith Olbermann was a really good broadcaster and good at what he did on SportsCenter, and now he's become a cartoon, and I don't get it.
Yeah, and then last season, not requiring it. The season prior, you've got Rodgers who was inoculated, and Olbermann was leading the charge against him, and then soon after, the league stopped.
Hey, good for McAfee bringing it up on a network, by the way, that got sued by Sage Steele because she sued them about speaking out against vaccinations.
That's right. More headlines next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Vikings show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby! I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
6th and Peabody, broadcasting live from the OutKick studio with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us, and our goal over the next hour and 20 minutes is to get you to the weekend. Chad and I are already there. Hot Mike with Hunt and with Row. Chad's in the chat as well on YouTube. You can search out OutKick and join the conversation.
We
Subscribe
may have
to the channel.
we may also have to bid as a show on some of these offerings from some Hollywood celebrities.
This is
it's an eBay auction going on.
It's like a
they're
SNL
offering
skit
up different things
in their good run.
Yeah,
of
they're
SNL.
offering up different things. This is, I believe, 1,000% real. In order to raise money to put into a fund to help with health benefits and different things for crew members that are being affected by the actors and writers strike. So, like an example is, there is you can bid on it. You can have a staring contest with Cillian Murphy, the actor who played Oppenheimer in Oppenheimer. One of them is you can get high with Christopher Moltisanti, the actor who played him in Sopranos. A lot of different things in
Lena
here.
Dunham will spend an afternoon rendering a custom mural.
Yeah, pass on that one. You can have coffee, virtual coffee, with different actors and actresses.
Yeah, this is a wormhole we can definitely go down for a while at the bar.
A watercolor portrait of your dog by John Lithgow.
Adam Scott of Parks and Recreation will be walking a winner's dog in Los Angeles for up to an hour.
Bob Odenkirk and David Cross will
auction.
join you for dinner. Right now, the bid's at $10,000 if you want to have dinner with Better Call Saul.
This is Maggie Gyllenhaal, 20 minutes, 20 questions, ask me anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Sarah Silverman's offered the same thing. A 20-minute Zoom call, an AMA. Ask them anything for 20 questions.
Chad, each week we ask the question of here's one of them. Can sit in silence with Nathan Fielder for an entire hour?
I don't know much about Nathan Fielder. He had that show on HBO.
$2,624 is the current bid. You have 8 hours and 22 minutes left to get your bid in, Chad.
Natasha Lyonne, the actress, will help you solve the New York Times crossword puzzle for the day. $4,550 on that one.
We need like the cast of Righteous Gemstones to jump in on this.
We'll sort through this and find the best ones and see if we can't come up with a bit of our own.
Chad, what we can come up with each week is the dumpster fire of the week, and I co-sign on the lane you're taking this and the fire that you're certainly watching.
There's a 5-alarm fire going on in Lansing, Michigan right now around Michigan State. I just, look, this is a great example of how tenuous things can be in sport, right? You think that, okay, yeah, we're not winning to a certain extent, but, you know, we got a coach. He's highly paid. He'll hopefully figure it out. He's got a $95 million contract, and that's Mel Tucker at Michigan State. And then you see reports that he allegedly sexually harassed and had phone sex. Not allegedly, he admitted to that. But that he allegedly harassed a rape survivor who was hired by the university to speak to the program. And given the history of Larry Nassar and some incidents with Mark D'Antonio and his staff and things that went on at Michigan State, I just can't think of a dumber story that's out there than that. Regardless of what happened or whether or not he should be fired with cause and all that and, you know, forgive and forget or whatever. I don't know the details of it and what's really going on here. I just see that as an administrator or his boss at Michigan State and think, man, could we get any dumber than this right here? The fact that you are engaged in this activity with the rape survivor that was brought on campus to speak to the team about sexual assault and sexual harassment. It's just such a dumb story that leads to what I think is the biggest dumpster fire in college sports this week. It was Northwestern this offseason. Now it's another Big Ten program. It's Michigan State that's had to move on to an interim coach because of this situation with Mel Tucker. It's a total dumpster fire, and it's my biggest one of the week.
Yeah, I'm with you on the narrative there. Tucker's said this is not true. The allegations are false. and that it was consensual. But the lane you're taking there is just from a common sense aspect, right? The leader of the football program, the money that they've paid him, he is the face of Michigan State in many ways, and the common sense aspect of what are you doing here as a leader of men, leader of that locker room, and the spokesman and the face of the athletic programs. That's Mel Tucker, based on expectations. Now, I realize Tom Izzo's name is on the football facility, but this is the sport across the country that everyone's pointing to. And we have all kinds of topics in the offseason about the highest paid coaches and the $9.5 million and living up to expectations and what he represents. This would fall into the category of putting things in a bad light for the university. And the contract language, this would apply to the contract language.
Yeah, look, I mean, Mel Tucker brought this part of it on himself. I'm lumping Michigan State athletics into all this because they signed this guy to a $95 million contract after one good season because they felt like they had to do that to keep him, because they felt that everyone in the SEC was going to come after him and they weren't going to be able to retain him. So they overreacted to the good season, and he's not done much since. In fact, he's been pretty bad. And while Michigan State is 2-0 going into this week's game against Washington, they haven't been overly impressive, and now you're dealing with this. So it's the whole circular nature of this that they probably overpromised someone money and a contract that he was not worthy of. And now they get this bit of information, and I think what's happening here is Michigan State said, wow, this guy's really dumb to do this. Let's get out of all that contract that we have and all that guaranteed money and go find someone better that's not going to cost us as much money.
Yeah.
So it's a dumpster fire.
But they still received the results of this investigation, of this complaint that the Title IX that they looked into, right? They received this in July.
Yeah.
And he started the season as the head coach. It wasn't until it went public that they suspended him and called a 5 p.m. press conference on a Sunday evening.
Yeah, and they pulled the old, it's not just because it got out into the public, in the media. The USA Today report had details we were unaware of based on what we knew about the Title IX investigation going on. That was the claim by them.
Sounds a lot like Northwestern. Details we were unaware of within 3 days.
The reality is it got out, so they did something.
Chad, there is a Mexican journalist and a UFO, I guess, enthusiast, Jaime Maussan. I hope I'm saying his last name right.
That was way better than if Davey tried to pronounce that name.
He showed
I can guarantee
politicians
that.
in
I don't
Mexico.
know if that's correct or not, but if Davey tried to pronounce that, that was way better than him doing that.
It wouldn't be Jamie or Jaime, you're saying.
Yeah, it would have sounded way less certain and way worse.
Just go with it. Jaime Maussan. At the hearing this past week, Tuesday, I believe it was.
You said it with such confidence. I believe that's what it is.
Showing two bodies, quote unquote bodies, that were displayed in these cases. It looks like, you've got a funeral service going on, visitation.
It was very formal the way it was presented.
And
that's not very scientific. It looks like there's a service going on.
Elated, elongated heads, 3 fingers, and claiming that these were found in Peru in 2017. But
this was the Mexican government presenting this, or this was being presented to the Mexican government?
This is the journalist showing politicians at a hearing.
Gotcha. Okay. Presented to the Mexican government.
Yes, saying that it was not related to any life on Earth. Look, compare what was presented and use some common sense, and just know that it wasn't Jaime Maussan that found these extraterrestrial beings in Peru in 2017, but it was actually Steven Spielberg who directed E.T. Miraculously, whatever was presented to politicians in Mexico looks just like E.T., just drawn out and dehydrated. Chad, what are the odds? It's like Rodgers coming out of the darkness retreat and he sees the New York Jets somehow as the team instead of retirement. What are the odds that what looks like to be a chiseled rock was presented to politicians and made headlines to where we're discussing it and mocking this. And some people actually are buying into the fact that this is some mummified alien from outer space. It's a dehydrated E.T. And Elliot is sad because E.T. is now being mocked.
It looks like E.T. when he's found in the bottom of that creek in the movie. The first time that my mother says that I really cried watching something, I was 3 or 4, and there was a re-release of E.T. in theaters. It came out in 1982, the year I was born. It came out later. My mom took me to see E.T. She claims I was maybe 3 to 4 years old, and that I was bawling in the theater, and she could not get me to stop crying because I saw this image that we're showing right now of this alien, which was basically E.T. dehydrated in the riverbank when Elliot thought he was dead in the movie, but he wasn't dead. They brought E.T. back to life with the love of Elliot and his little sister, Drew Barrymore, in this movie. Yeah, it's not real. I don't know why people hang on to this and claim it's true. I saw a story from OutKick that was like, "Do you believe now?" And I just retweeted and I said, "No, no. This is not the evidence that I've been looking for."
And here's the
someone
other
having a plaster created alien in the image of E.T.
So two things that I think about here. Like, first, if you believe that governments are hiding this, the idea that someone who would have found this isn't boasting about it and telling people about it and just handing it over to leaders of governments is ridiculous, because the name of the person who goes down as finding this is a world-renowned name, not just in their own country. And number two, Neil deGrasse Tyson would be all over television speaking on behalf of this. And even he doesn't buy into this. He said, hey, if other life forms visited Earth, we would all know about it because it wouldn't be a secret. They would let everyone know that they're here and they're taking over. But somehow the planet, every alien or anyone that would come to our planet, the idea is they're much more sophisticated, right? Much more intelligent.
Yeah.
So if everyone's willing to admit that,
sentient
why
beings.
would the dumber, the dumber planet be able to draw up and see and miraculously come up with a movie from the 80s where Steven Spielberg is showing us what this guy is claiming to have found in 2017? Again, ridiculous.
I am of the belief that if this exists, then it's going to be more over the history of time on Earth. There would be more of an announcement of their arrival, or a way more surefire way of knowing that we have recovered a UFO, or you've got the great evidence, Hutton, of where UFO sightings happen. And it always tends to happen in North America or Europe,
they don't
where
have a
people are more obsessed with alien life being a thing.
Yeah. Chad's old phone has a better camera on it than what people are able to film and what they find in the woods or find in the air. And it's never on a clear photograph. And the idea that just, we didn't actually land on the moon. It's like, really, Russia and Japan would just not care that we're lying about it at the time in the 60s.
Yeah.
We're not getting away with
Some
that.
conspiracy theories maybe we pay a little bit more attention to. I'm not buying this Mexican journalist presenting to whatever they were presenting to in Mexico that this is an actual alien skeleton.
Yeah. Did anyone run the DNA tests of the chiseled rock?
Is the CIA, have they been alerted of this now? Are they in the loop? Guys, we got to get in the loop on this alien skeleton that was recovered.
The chalk outline there. Coming up, headlines that include Lane Kiffin and a lawsuit against him, the head coach of the Ole Miss program.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Old taste of the Southern Legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here on this Friday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Coming up, we've got Chad Withrow's top 10 college football games that you need to pay attention to.
This is an exercise that gets me excited for Saturday. I really do. I mean, I hope some people that watch or listen to this show on our radio station, watch on the website, watch on YouTube, however you're consuming this show, I hope there's at least a few people out there that are as excited about this list as I am every week.
Because
just the process of putting it together, it's fun, and it's what gets me excited, gets me going.
I'm eager to hear about the around the top 3 or 4 games that you have ranked this week. Chad, Ole Miss, last night they were said that the current player, they had not received a lawsuit despite reports. Since then, details on the lawsuit alleging poor treatment from Lane Kiffin and how the university has also treated this.
Yeah, and I'm reading this is a story from the Fox News website, so I'm reading directly from this, and it quotes some parts of the claim in the lawsuit. It's a crazy story. DeSanto Rollins is a defensive tackle for Ole Miss. He played in 3 games total with the Rebels, okay? He's suing Ole Miss, but at the time of that this was reported, Ole Miss says, we don't have a lawsuit in our possession, so we don't know what you're talking about.
And he was never removed from the team.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin was contacted and said, I'm just going to point to the school's statement on it, that we don't have that. So DeSanto Rollins is alleging that Ole Miss, they being Ole Miss, is responsible for his ailing mental health. Okay, as we mentioned, the response from Ole Miss is we have not received a lawsuit. In addition, he, being Rollins, continues to have the opportunity to receive all of the mental health care and resources advantages that are afforded student athletes at the university. Kiffin referred ESPN when he was contacted by ESPN to the school statement. In 2022, this is coming from the claim from Rollins, because I think it's important to know the details of the lawsuit before we react and respond to it. Rollins suffered 2 injuries, an Achilles injury and a knee injury. This caused him, he's claiming, severe depression that, quote, substantially limited his ability to perform regular daily activities. Rollins alleges he was not referred for a mental health evaluation when he also suffered a concussion before both of those injuries. Quote, neither Kiffin, the football coaching staff, nor football trainers were provided with role-appropriate training about the signs and symptoms of health disorders and the behaviors of student athletes to monitor that may reflect psychological concerns. He claims that he suffered severe depression, anxiety, frustration, embarrassment, humiliation, feelings of worthlessness, sadness, loss of sleep, and loss of appetite. So when Kiffin met with Rollins, Rollins claims, this is in the lawsuit, that Kiffin called him a word I'm not going to say, or it definitely would get me canceled. He also said, he asked the question, what bleeping world he lived in by not showing up to workouts and not meeting with Kiffin when Kiffin asked a previous time. And he alleges that Rollins was hiding behind his bleep. All of this because Rollins came in and requested 14 days of a mental break on the team. And Kiffin responded this way. Rollins alleges Kiffin also said, you're done, you're off the team, when he requested this. This is a crazy story, the Hutton. We don't often see this. And Lane Kiffin, at least publicly on his social media, has been very much a proponent of talking about mental health. Like, this has been a theme with Kiffin for the last 2 years since he's been at Ole Miss.
Well,
and this is odd.
This is also more or less the allegations. I'm not talking about the language, more the treatment of the player wanting to seek help with for his mental health. Tez Walker at North Carolina wanting to transfer there and play, and Tyler Brown, the offensive tackle that was going to Colorado. The NCAA denied both players the ability or the waiver to play this season. That's with North Carolina, Mac Brown, the AD, Cunningham, others, quote, providing overwhelming evidence of receiving help for mental health needs. This is saying, like, no, you're not going to get that. Like, that also doesn't help in the waiver from the NCAA if you're claiming that you need help, so you need to go here because you're receiving help from said program. They're also denying that ability. It's a bit out of whack in regards to that. I don't think, if true, Kiffin didn't handle this well. But I also am reading the statement from Ole Miss about how he's still a member of the program. He was never removed from the team. He still receives all benefits of a scholarship athlete, as any athlete on campus receives. That, and the fact that the story's out before Ole Miss had even received, we have not received a lawsuit. We're unaware. That's also weird as part of this.
Yeah.
With Kiffin pointing back to the statement, but then also on social media doing the opposite of what's alleged.
Yeah, and look, you want to be sensitive if someone's going through something, but also everyone knows that if you claim mental health, it's kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. And this is Kiffin clearly saying, that's not what's going on with this kid. We know of other things going on, and you're hiding behind that as a shield to it. But yet, if someone claims it, it's hard to say they're lying about it. Now, he also goes on in the lawsuit and says, quote, Kiffin has never kicked a white football player off the team for requesting or taking a break, but has allowed a white football player who had been removed from the team to return to the team. The suit also mentions that members of the women's volleyball team are allowed to take mental breaks to deal with mental issues without being kicked off the team. It also states that white female softball players, not just softball players, white female softball players were allowed to take a 14-day mental break without being kicked off the team. This is where you get the Jamel Hills of the world to chime in and take this case for you and help you with it. So probably a smart move from a PR standpoint, whether this is true or not. And Hutton, this goes back to this is some of the issues around the state of Mississippi that have gone on for a long time that still can be an issue for Ole Miss or Mississippi State to recruit players that aren't in state that are black. That there's, I mean, you can talk to people now and they'll tell you some people have some reluctance to go to the state of Mississippi, and this is kind of pulling at that sort of story with what's being alleged here.
Well, let me just look up his name. Derek Nix. Lane Kiffin, in the first scrimmage, had wide receivers coach Derek Nix be the head coach of the scrimmage of fall camp. That also made headlines. Giving him experience and also shedding light on the lack of diversity among FBS head coaches across the sport. That was the headline from Ole Miss and Kiffin weeks ago. So is it about mental health and not receiving that help when you asked for it and you were told, no, absolutely not, and get off the team, see ya, you're kicked out? Or is it about racial discrimination? Which one is it?
Yeah, he's trying to claim both. He's suing because his mental health was jeopardized, but in the lawsuit, he's also saying, well, this wouldn't have happened to a white player. They've taken breaks. Look, coaches have long, and I think this is probably pretty smart. Same rules don't apply for everyone. Now, if it's a racial discrimination issue, that's clearly wrong, but there are many circumstances or players that are different for whatever reason that coaches allow for certain things.
Right.
They don't allow with others, or they understand the circumstances better in one situation and allow for that break. I think it's just crazy for me to think about, like, if your mental health is in jeopardy, as DeSanto Rollins is claiming here, and you're feeling this bad, you have anxiety, depression, thoughts of worthlessness, and you just have a hard time moving forward, you don't need to be playing football. Like, you need to step away and go get help. If that's taking a year off, if that's taking 6 months off and leaving the team, you go and do that. If he's saying that to Lane Kiffin, and this was Lane Kiffin's response, then shame on Lane Kiffin. If everything he's saying in this is true, he handled it very poorly. But I'm also, as if I'm an SEC football coach at the highest level of college football, and someone's coming to me and saying, Coach, man, this spring camp has been tough, these summer workouts, I need 2 weeks for a mental health break. I mean, my response would be, are you kidding me? Like, you're on scholarship, you're a part of the team. Like, if you need a day off because you're physically hurt, or you need to take a break for a weekend or whatever, we can talk about that. But you don't step away for 2 weeks from the team.
Right.
Because you need a mental health break as a college student athlete on scholarship. That, to me, is grounds to just remove your scholarship. Well, then you're quitting the team. And look, we'll help you. If we need to help you get mental health help, we can do that. And we will help you do that. But you're quitting the team when you say you're taking a 2-week mental health break.
Well, and he was reinstated back to practice the next month. And they're also saying, like, prior to that, they did not give him materials about mental health awareness or a referral to a professional that he should seek out prior to being reinstated. And then he hurt his knee right after that, after being reinstated and cleared, coming back from the Achilles injury that he's pointing to.
Yeah.
So,
look, we'll see where it goes. All we know from Ole Miss is when this story broke, they said we have not received any lawsuit yet. So there's going to be more talk about this.
But the other thing I can't keep from referring to is Ole Miss is saying that he's still benefiting from all things part of that any athlete would on campus.
But they're not saying that he's on the team. It's more of he's still on scholarship. But I don't know that it's like he's
DeSanto was never removed from the football team and remains on scholarship. That's the quote from the university. They're saying he's on the team.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, he's still on the team, but he's filing a lawsuit against the coach, and they didn't receive the lawsuit whenever ESPN's putting the story out yesterday. It's a weird time frame and an interesting response because they're saying, hey, he continues to have the opportunity to receive all of the resources and advantages that are afforded to student athletes at the university. And so, again, seeking help, that's great. But the lawsuit, as well as, it's not as bad as you wanting to leave, right?
Well, there's, we've been talking about.
It also says that Kiffin told him he would be removed from the team. Ole Miss is saying he hasn't been. That's pretty easy to figure out.
We've been talking about Mel Tucker and crazy stories in college sports that can derail a season or a program.
Yeah.
This is a very weird distraction to have to deal with 3 weeks into a season. If you're Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, that an active player, supposedly an active player on your
That's
roster,
what the university said,
is suing you for $40 million for damaging your mental health and putting you in jeopardy.
Who do they have this week? Ole Miss?
I'll look it up.
It's not, they're back at home. Georgia Tech. They host Georgia Tech, and then they're on the road at Alabama a week from now, their upcoming schedule. How about Bama switching quarterbacks already?
Well, and it's not Ty Simpson. They have a 5-star quarterback, and I'm surprised they didn't go to him, but it's the Notre Dame transfer, Tyler Buckner. Clearly a reason Tommy Rees brought him on as a transfer, that he knows him and likes him, or at least has some bit of familiarity and comfortability with him. So, is this acknowledging that your offense just is not going to be what it can be with Jalen Milroe? Is this trying to give your offense some juice against the team they should score a bunch of points against in South Florida? I don't know.
It's more than the quarterback, but it is the quarterback. Because, Chad, the one thing I just could not wrap my head around this offseason, they brought in Buckner, they bring in Tommy Rees, but they chose to go with this bully ball mentality that they had been doing prior to Bill O'Brien. And prior to the excellent quarterbacks that had been running through there the last decade. But was there ever a question about who the quarterback was? I never got that sense. I always got the sense that it was Milroe. And week 3 at South Florida, you're changing quarterbacks. It's odd. It's odd coming from that program is what I mean.
Yeah. Who normally have everything buttoned up, ready to go.
Normally.
They know their plans. And
if it's not right, they fix it.
Yeah,
and
they're
not playing. They're not playing all that different with the penalties and the mental errors, the operations with the false starts and different things. They've had touchdowns called back. The quarterback has always bailed them out. Bryce Young bailed them out. We saw it with Tua, Hurts, others. Like, you can point to examples of that. And I know Milroe wasn't doing that, but a 10-point loss at home to Texas, and they're already pulling Milroe. And by the way, with Buckner, there was no question. I was there for their week 1 matchup against Middle Tennessee. No doubt who the backup quarterback was that day. They were able to put him in based on the blowout situation in the second half. It was Buckner. And meanwhile, Ty Simpson got in the game, but late snaps.
I think there's some truth to the idea that I just don't think Bama, they've lost a bit of an edge. Not because of Saban, but a little bit because of Saban's inability to continue to have an elite coaching staff. I think there were guys that were around that were very helpful in keeping everyone towing the line, the Bama way. I think Jeremy Pruitt was one of those guys for years for Nick Saban that had that type of edge and fire to him with that team. And then when you go from Lane Kiffin to Steve Sarkisian, I mean, go down the list of offensive coordinators, Bill O'Brien,
Yeah.
they were even able to have.
Well, they couldn't wait for him to get an NFL job.
Yeah, and that was the step down, was Bill O'Brien. I don't know that Tommy Rees is of that level. We'll see. He's very young still. But I don't think the staff, they lose their strength coach, which was a big part of what they did, Scott Cochran.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of look at that and see where there's a few cracks in the facade now at Alabama when they started losing those coaches.
Chad's bringing the top 10 games of the college football weekend. That's next on Hot Mic.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be this stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby. I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there a dream candidate, someone that you think could save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
6th and Peabody, our broadcast location each day for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow here on the OutKick Network. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Great for your tailgate. You can find it wherever you may be listening right now. Chad, big plans for game day tomorrow?
It's softball game day in my household, so
Okay.
I'll be coaching 8U softball at 1:30 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Well, then you see your
Those are
team
my
under the
plans.
lights, and then
Yeah.
Colorado State.
I'll be watching a lot of football around that 2-hour window.
No doubt.
Of that game. Be a lot of football around that.
I'm curious where some of these early kickoffs are going to be in the top 10 games of the week, because there are a couple of them at noon Eastern that are very intriguing. Plus, the nightcap, also something to tune in for. It is time for Chad Withrow's top 10 games of the college football weekend.
Hutton, I will unveil my top 10, then I'll give you the 3 or 4 games that just missed the cut of the top 10 once I get through these. Game number 10, Colorado State. I feel like this is the one big NFL thing with this music going on now. Colorado State at Colorado. I want to almost do a Hutton impression as I'm doing it, as I hear this. Colorado, I think, runs away with this game, Hutton. Colorado State, they played one game. They had a week off. They've had 2 weeks now to prepare for Colorado. Their defense is not good. They're going to want to throw the ball a lot.
They've already made a
Colorado's
quarterback
been
change.
susceptible on defense some. I don't think Colorado State has what it takes to hang in this game. The Buffs, a 23.5-point favorite. This is a Hutton special because it will take place at 10 p.m. Eastern time.
I thought you were going to double the spread.
Saturday night. I'm not doubling the spread, but I do think they cover the spread.
Hey, imagine if Norvell and Colorado State win this game, Chad. Imagine that. It's not going to happen. Imagine that.
It's like
what it would do for Norvell.
It's like John Lennon said. Imagine. Just all of us imagine for a minute the way John Lennon would. Game number 9 this week. Let's go to the SEC.
Okay.
Oh, the dying 3:30 Eastern Time CBS SEC game of the week. That will be no more after this year. The swan song of Gary Danielson and that team. We're going to see the first game of the SEC game of the week this year. Probably going to be a blowout, but I think there's reason to hope that maybe, just maybe, South Carolina can make this a game. The Gamecocks going on the road to Athens to face a Georgia team that is a 27.5-point favorite in this one. As I mentioned, 2:30 Central Time on CBS. Hutton, Spencer Rattler, 816 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. That would surprise most because they got handled by North Carolina in the opener. They were tied with Fuhrman at halftime this past weekend. It's not been a great start for South Carolina, but the great start, or the bad start, is happened because they can't block. They have no run game. Spencer Rattler's been really good so far.
He's been fine.
Can he throw for enough yards against the Georgia defense that has not been tested yet this year to make this game close in the second half? We'll find out.
O-line has allowed some sacks on potential interceptions that were not thrown because he didn't have time.
The troubling part of this, North Carolina looked like the 85 Bears against South Carolina's offensive line.
And then?
7 sacks, I think, 7 or 9. It was an odd number, I know. Either 7 or 9 sacks in that game. Then North Carolina went back out against App State the next week. It looked like North Carolina's defense again. Appalachian State did whatever they wanted, and they weren't getting 9 sacks against them. That's a troubling sign for South Carolina's offensive line that just may be really bad. Game number 8, big noon kickoff. Penn State at Illinois. Penn State a 14.5-point favorite. Again, noon on Fox. Drew Aller, 78% completion percentage. Penn State's rushing attack is best in the Big Ten. And here's the bad news for the Illini. Kansas did whatever they wanted offensively last Friday night against Illinois. I think Penn State rolls in this game. Hutton, it's a 14.5-point line. I think only because it's on the road. I think this is a 3 or 4 touchdown win for Penn State.
Aller will have a top 5 defensive line in college football coming after him. And they have a very good interior presence. Newton is tops among them for Illinois. Just throwing that out, that's how you disrupt this game. I'm with you, though, Chad. I think this is the Nittany Lions being undervalued with that spread on the road. It is intriguing just from a true road start in the conference for the first time for Aller.
And we're going to see Brett Bielema on the sideline, which is always a treat. Now that's the good news for that one.
I guess.
Big noon kickoff, though. The pregame show will not be there, but the game itself will be Penn State at Illinois. Game number 7. An odd matchup here. This feels like more of a Music City Bowl matchup than something in week 3 of the college football season. Minnesota on the road to take on 20th ranked North Carolina. UNC Hutton, I mentioned it, they allowed 500 yards, 219 rushing yards, and they had to hold on for a 40-34 double overtime win over Appalachian State. Minnesota, after week 1, not being able really to do anything offensively until very late against Nebraska, they got back to being Minnesota under P.J. Fleck, pounding the rock, good rushing attack. Look out for Taylor and Tyler. Darius Taylor and the freshman Sean Tyler. Two-headed monster at running back for Minnesota. They got it going last week. Different type of test, though, against North Carolina on the road. Tar Heels an 8-point favorite.
Minnesota defense is good, too.
Yeah.
That's the other factor with this. I'm intrigued. And North Carolina with Drake May, let's see it against a solid defense at home.
Hutton, game number 6 for us, going to be Pitt at West Virginia. These teams, I know West Virginia is not any good. I don't think Pitt is very good. But as Andy Staples said, in a game like this, you just embrace the weird. Because weird things happen in the backyard brawl. Hell, weird things happen in West Virginia every minute of the day. So certainly on a Saturday night on ABC, 7:30 Eastern time, weird things can and probably will happen in this game.
What did Pac-Man Jones say? That's just how they is in West Virginia?
That's just how they is in West Virginia. That is a quote to remember as you watch this game Saturday night. Pitt was a putrid 10 for 32 through the air against Cincinnati. And Hutton, they almost won the game. They lost 27-21 because some crazy things happening in that one. West Virginia is a team that needs to run it, and they can run it a bit. They are horrific against the pass, though. May not matter because Pitt can't throw the football.
I'll have multiple screens with multiple games on. This will be on the smallest screen available.
Yeah.
This game.
This will be on your.
I will pay attention.
This will be on your old iPhone, the iPhone that matches my model that you still keep around. Yeah, not even your primary phone. Your burner will be playing this one on Saturday night. Game number 5. It's an intriguing one as we move into the top 5. BYU at Arkansas. Razorbacks an 8-point favorite. This game is at 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN2. BYU, good defense, especially good against the run. Arkansas, surprisingly, only 3.5 yards per carry so far this year. Rocket Sanders has not gotten it going. KJ Jefferson, they haven't tried to run as much with him. What do they look like in this game? Arkansas, again, that 3.5 yards per carry, that was against Western Carolina and Kent State. So they've not revved up the rushing attack that should be good this year yet. This could be a low-scoring defensive battle. Hutton, we just mentioned Pitt. The starting quarterback for BYU, Keaton Slovis, who transferred over from Pitt. If you remember, last year's second game of the season, he gets injured in the Tennessee game, and they had to go with a backup quarterback the entire second half. Former USC quarterback, transferred to Pitt, now at BYU. He's eligible to play, but Tez Walker's not. I have no idea why. Either way, he'll be playing in this one. BYU at Arkansas.
I trust.
Which screen will this be on for you?
I trust. I want to see KJ Jefferson.
This be on your Razor phone from 2007.
Yeah, it's the Razor, the flip phone from. Yeah, I didn't have the Razor. I had the flip phone, and then I had the long one piece. You know what I'm talking about?
It'll be on the one piece.
Yeah.
This is a one piece kind of game.
Yeah, scores only available. 10 cents per text message.
I'm confident.
Hey, Dan Enos, though, you mentioned coaches from what he did with Tua. Let's see the upward trajectory now with KJ Jefferson, who I haven't paid much attention to start the season.
Going to get a chance to pay some attention to him. Top 4, Hutton, I think, will have big screen type attention in your house.
Yes.
You're going to be able to watch these games not on a phone, but on a big screen. Game number 4, 15th ranked Kansas State, a 3.5-point favorite at Missouri. Game is at noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central on SEC Network. Kansas State is number 1 in the nation against the run. Missouri wants to run the football. They're allowing a bunch of sacks this year with their offensive line. K-State, when you really look statistically at these two teams, Missouri's struggled. They ran it pretty well against South Dakota. Middle Tennessee stuffed them in that game. They didn't get much of a push against their defense. They're now going against the top rushing defense in college football. I think Will Howard is going to get some things done in this game. Hutton, I like Kansas State big in this one. I think 3.5 is not enough points even though this game is at Missouri and it's a huge game for Eli Drinkwitz, I think K-State gets it done and shows that they are a contender in the Big 12.
Middle had a chance to win that game late a week ago. Eli Drinkwitz has yet to have a winning season at Missouri. 19-19 is his overall record. And keep in mind, they finished above 500 11 of the 15 seasons prior to him taking that job. It's time to climb the ladder, at least by a game. And I think last week's win allows them to do so. K-State needs this victory. I picked K-State to win the Big 12. Let's go. Let's go Wildcats.
Yeah, it's a crazy game because I think it's important for Eli Drinkwitz, but I think it's also an opportunity for a statement for Kansas State to show that they're going to be a player.
This would be Missouri's first top 15 victory since 2018 if they beat K-State.
Wow.
It's been a long time.
Game number 3, LSU, 14th ranked, 9.5-point favorites on the road at Mississippi State. Another one of those 11 a.m. games. You mentioned 11 a.m. Central on ESPN. Mississippi State with Zach Arnett, a guy we talked to at SEC Media Days here in Nashville. Defensive guy. This is not the Mike Leach offensive type team for Mississippi State. They want to pound the rock. They want to go heavy and they want to run the football. Defensively, they were able to generate 5 takeaways against Arizona last week. Had to go to overtime, but they beat Arizona in that game. The big question is, can Will Rodgers open things up with a passing attack for Mississippi State? The passing game is there for Jaden Daniels and LSU. What does Mississippi State attempt to do offensively, Hutton? You're saying it's a mistake, the way they're trying to run their offense
They're
right
running the ball right now. They were passing the ball a year ago, 69% of all snaps. That was the air raid Mike Leach system. This year, 34% of plays are passes with Will Rodgers.
You've
not got to get that. No. And LSU's pass defense has not been good. They are, according to PFF, the 10th worst coverage grade in the Power 5. It's time to let Will Rodgers do what he does best, and that's throw the football. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it and win.
I'm interested in this. I think there could be some craziness in that game.
By the way, LSU very good at stopping the run.
Game number 2. Number 8, Washington at Michigan State. The Huskies.
I love you have this high.
A 16-point favorite. Hutton, this will be, I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction. This will be the highest game on my list all year to appear on the Peacock streaming service. This game is on Peacock at 4 p.m. Also a weird time to kick off a football game. 4 p.m. on Peacock. You can see my second biggest game of the week. Harlan Bennett taking over for Mel Tucker, suspended indefinitely at Michigan State. Is there some sort of strange factor in the game with guys rallying behind that? Don't know. Michigan State has been pretty good passing the football so far this year. The problem is they're good against Central Michigan and Richmond. Those have been their 2 opponents. But pass defense, which was an enormous issue a year ago for this defense, looks like it continues to be an issue. And Hutton, they're not going to get any favors from Michael Penix Jr. and Washington. Washington is averaging 472 yards per game through the air alone in their first 2 contests. This is a passing juggernaut for Washington, and that's 2 decent games. Boise State and Tulsa, the 2 wins so far for Washington. They've looked great.
And the acting head coach, Barnett, is the defensive backs coach, secondary coach, and he's facing Michael Penix Jr. in that passing
Tough
attack.
assignment.
By the way, the quote from him was, "I'm being totally honest here. I wanted to be the head coach of Michigan State, but not in this way, obviously." He did that while at Spartan Stadium in a nice suit. He showed up with his first meeting with the media in a tailored suit.
I like
Props to Barnett for doing so. He's taking it serious. D'Antonio's the head coach of that team.
Yeah, no doubt. Game number 1.
And he's on headset, by the way.
Yes. Game number 1 of the week, no surprise. Tennessee at Florida. Tennessee a 6.5-point favorite. This game 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. May surprise some people. You hear Tennessee, you hear Josh Heupel, you think offense first and foremost. The Vols are number 1 nationally through 2 weeks in sacks and tackles for loss. This is a defense that will get after you. They can live in your backfield. Florida's offensive line, not good against Utah. They blow out McNeese State. Not much to take away from that. They weren't good against Utah. The Gators, though, this may surprise you also. Granted, it was against the backup quarterback. They only allowed 270 yards of offense in Salt Lake City against Utah. Their defense is good. Their secondary is good. Has UT been holding back? Have the Vols been holding something back in the vertical passing game they haven't shown yet? This is a big opportunity to maybe make some big plays in this game. Hutton, this could be a low-scoring defensive battle in this game between Tennessee and Florida, surprisingly enough.
I get the feeling it's the opposite for some reason because everyone's expecting low scoring.
Yeah,
both fan bases are thinking
it's going to be a shootout now.
Let's preview this game when we come back. Plus, wrong team favored in 3 matchups across college football. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
favorite game of the weekend, Tennessee and Florida. And, I mean, we'll all be at least tuning in to the kickoff of Colorado State. I'll be watching it because it's the late kickoff that I love. Others will tune in just to see the walkouts. I like referring to prime time and all the hype as the fight promotion going into the pay-per-view each week.
It really is less about the games now and just more about everything surrounding the game.
Yeah, and then a post-game presser. It's like Dana White addressing the UFC media. And then by Monday, opponent and the victor go the spoils. We won't be discussing anything involving Norvell unless somehow Colorado State wins. It'll be on to Oregon and Colorado taking it personal.
Yeah.
Just like they're doing.
The Conor McGregor of college football with his press conferences.
Every week. Chad, we off to a nice start in our sports wagering segment going into the college football weekend, or at least I am. Wrong team favored.
Hutton is.
Wrong team favored.
No one else is.
I'm 2-0 to begin, where we take the underdog and our team has to win. Then you get the points that they are receiving in return. I've got 9.5 after winning Texas and Alabama. I took the Longhorns last week. Also took Florida State against LSU. It gave me 2.5, but I got some nice points from Texas winning by 10 and doing more than just covering. That's why I'm up 9.5 because you and Davey have 0.
We're 0 for so far, and I can't go 0-3. So we got to get to unveil some winners here because that's just embarrassing.
Davey Hudson, who's out today, he leads us off, and he goes with Florida taking 7. Is it at 6.5 now? Roughly?
It's at 6, I think. I think it's actually gone down to 6.
Whenever he, and I just wanted to clarify because whenever he made this pick before he left this week, Florida was +7. He's an example, Chad, of what I was referring to last segment of both fan bases feel like the other team is being undersold a bit in this matchup.
Yeah.
Florida fans don't believe in what the Gators have done thus far and where they're headed. Meanwhile, Tennessee fans just know the history with Florida and the swamp. And Clay has written about this and joined us on Wednesday and said, until Tennessee proves this, he's never betting against Florida. He's especially in the swamp where they're receiving points, he's taking those against the Vols. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I was in college the last time Tennessee went to Florida and won, and they've had chances since. Now, there's been a number of years where Urban Meyer just had a dominant team and Tennessee was not very good. So there's nothing you do about that. You know, they're just a lot better. But twice during Butch Jones' tenure, they had Florida on the ropes in Gainesville, and they were inventing crazy ways to lose games in the last second. So there is something to that with Tennessee at Florida. Look, I like what Davey's going with here. I understand it. I've watched all these games
He's
too.
taking Florida to win for this exercise.
Yeah, I think for once it's not going to be because the coach has the team nervous or isn't going to take the proper chances in the game. I think if Tennessee goes down there and loses, it's because what I think might be the case this Tennessee team, that it's just an enormous drop-off at quarterback, and maybe we've been underselling the change from Alex Golesh to Joey Halzle as offensive coordinator. It's always going to be Heupel's offense first and foremost, but maybe there is a factor there. I don't know. It's a big opportunity for Joe Milton. Florida did not look great in that opener, losing to a backup quarterback in Utah, but defensively they did some good things. I think it's a good opportunity for Tennessee's defense to continue to show how improved they are in this game. They can get after Graham Mertz, and he has shown himself to make some mistakes. If you can get to him and rattle him at any point in the game, maybe Tennessee's defense can do that.
Isn't the biggest concern, though, if you're betting Florida to win, if you're taking the points, it's just the simple fact that you don't buy that Joe Milton is going to do anything consistent in a big moment.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the only issue last week it was a no-brainer that they're winning the game against Austin Peay State University. The Govs. Let's go P. You've got other examples, too, to point to of inconsistencies. But, Chad, it's also a quarterback who is very streaky. When he's on,
let me bring up this factor, too, that I haven't heard anyone really talk about. Hutton, even as old as Joe Milton is and as long as he's been around, this is his first ever true road start.
Really?
At Michigan, when he was a starter in 2020, it was a COVID year. So they were playing in front of, 8,000 people, 10,000 people on the road. He's never been in an environment like this. He started game 1 at home on a Thursday night against Bowling Green.
Bowling Green.
That was 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then Pitt got hurt. And then when he started, well, I guess I take that back. He did start at Vanderbilt last year, but that was a home game for Tennessee with fans in the crowd. This is the first time.
You don't have to take that back.
Yeah, this is the first time that he is going to play in a true hostile environment as a starting quarterback. And it's in the Swamp at night.
I still buy Tennessee's offense getting streaky, getting hot, and
I think
the
their running
defense
backs
has improved to the point
I think
where
their running backs and running game is better than a year ago.
the defense has improved to the point where they can get off the field a couple of times.
Oh yeah.
And so for that reason, and I told Davey this, I'm not picking this game and wouldn't if it came to me on the opportunity to select, because I'm taking the Vols -7 or especially -6 or wherever it is now, -6.5.
See, I would take. I'm reluctant to even pick who's going to win, but I would take, if I was betting. I'm probably not going to touch this game. I would bet Florida plus the 7 or 6.5
or whatever it is,
thinking that Tennessee might win by 1 or 2 points. Right? Like, I'm not saying they're definitely going to lose, but
Tennessee did not cover a year ago.
No.
And that was at home and with that offense.
They were up over 2 scores in the fourth quarter, and you just saw there was one of those again. Here it comes.
Yeah.
It's happening again. And Anthony Richardson was great in that game. That's the saving grace for Tennessee if you're looking at it. There's no Anthony Richardson on that Florida offense. Anthony Richardson clearly capable of greatness with his skill set, right? I don't foresee, unless Graham Mertz turns into Spencer Rattler from a year ago that just flips the switch and is suddenly an NFL quarterback in this game. I don't think Florida has that guy. They got 2 good running backs, but Tennessee's been very good against the run. But I don't see them having that guy
Was that Richardson's second
quarterback.
best game last year to Utah?
Oh, I think it was way better than Utah. He was terrific in that game. He didn't throw the ball as well against Utah. He had some miraculous runs, and he had that one play, remember, the 2-point conversion where he spun out of trouble and found someone in the end zone?
Yeah.
He was consistently better against Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm counting the loss against him there. I shouldn't.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it.
Consistently better against Tennessee.
Chad, you're going with
you need a win. I need a win.
Get a win.
I'm not going big points here. I need a chip away. So I'm going with a 3-point home dog. Give me Kenny Dillingham and the Arizona State Sun Devils at home against Fresno State. Fresno State's already won 1 road game against a Power 5 team, and that was at Purdue to open the season.
Okay.
Really good team, good program. I think this is an important game for Dillingham. Wants to get some enthusiasm for that program again. I think they take care of business at home and beat Fresno State as a slight 3-point underdog.
Chad, I am going.
You're going west too, aren't you?
I am. Go west, young man. I am going against Vanderbilt. Last week you took Vandy, trying to get the outright win. I am taking UNLV.
In mid-second quarter, Hutton, I regretted that decision watching that game at 10 a.m.
UNLV getting 4.5 as they return home after losing to Michigan against Vanderbilt, who I don't know the depth chart very well at tight end beyond their starters, but they're down 2 tight ends in this game. That's their only injury concern, honestly, is the tight end position. But they struggled not just to score points, but to move the football. And I like UNLV returning home with an opportunity to beat an SEC team on the road. I'm taking the points after what has been a struggle for both. But UNLV at home is a winner, wrong team favored. Vandy hits the road looking for win number 2, and it's not going to happen.
I like that you and I somehow were able to, Davey, very obvious one, which isn't the wrong decision, but went with the game of the week, the biggest game in college football, and you and I managed to work in Fresno State and UNLV talk to this segment. That's
right.
What I admire.
If you're looking for a reason to play these games, you can certainly follow us. I think Chad's got a winner, too, based on his description. I'm not so certain about Davey with Florida winning over Tennessee in the Swamp. But
having watched all these games, I really like Davey's pick.
Well,
so we've watched that movie many times. So anyone that's associated with the Tennessee program, seen that film before.
Yeah, I've also seen a different script with this head coach and coaching staff.
I think from the head man down, you'd be foolish to say there's not a different personality and feeling about the team and the program and how they approach big games, for sure.
And last week could be a nice wake-up call, a bit going into the swamp.
I think
we'll see.
Getting humbled, it can help you. I think it's always great when you can get humbled in a win, right?
Fair.
Tennessee was humbled in a game that they weren't really challenged to lose the game.
At least it took place against Austin Peay and not tomorrow.
Right. If you're going to get humbled, you want to get humbled in a victory, and maybe that will help Tennessee. Big game for Billy Napier. Big game because, like I said, what are the 4 games they're going to measure you on at Florida? Tennessee, LSU, Florida State, Georgia. 0-4 in year 1, and this may be his best chance. If you look at what point spreads will be with some of these road games, maybe his best chance at home against Tennessee tomorrow.
Points
to win 1 in 2 years.
Got some great chances to take advantage of the incredible offer. Sorry, my headphones fell apart there. If you haven't taken your shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment, and here's the big reason why. Exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, you can grab this unique offer. Right now, new PointsBet users can get up to $1,000 in second-chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. Get this offer by visiting outkick.com/bet. Complete the registration process with PointsBet and make your first bet. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second-chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. You've got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. Head over to outkick.com/bet now to snag this offer.
It's going to be a big weekend.
Chad needs a second chance.
I need a second chance. I need my first win in wrong team favored. I need good things to happen this weekend.
NFL Moneymaker Lock on Sunday. I am going with Seattle and Detroit hitting the over. The over is large, 47.5, compared to what we might see across the NFL and what we did see playing the unders a week ago in week 1. NFL offenses struggled. This one should not be the case. With Seattle's offense, where I think Geno Smith picks up the pace, they're a 4.5-point underdog, and we saw what Detroit is capable of, and the idea that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get the football some more, even Dan Campbell has said that's the expectation. I'm going with the over as my lock, the Moneymaker Lock across the National Football League.
I'm going to go another wrong team favorite this weekend.
Okay.
Tennessee Titans have more pride than the Chargers.
Wow.
They're not going 0-2 at home.
They're not?
That is a prideful bunch.
DeAndre Hopkins is questionable.
I'm taking DeAndre Hopkins questionable. Also questionable Austin Eckler, who most think that he's probably going to sit up and play.
Actually. Doubtful.
Yeah, so I think that's a factor. I like Mike Vrabel rallying the troops better than I like Brandon Staley rallying the troops for the Chargers. I think the Titans, wrong team favorite. I think they went outright as a 2.5-point underdog at home. I think it's going to be an ugly game at times, but the Titans, they're comfortable in ugly games. I think they win at home.
2.5 points is exactly where they won it in the fourth.
Yeah, I think they win at home.
Field goals.
Chargers going to 0-2.
That's all we saw from Nick Folk.
But as I've said before, and I'll say it again.
Chargers go 0-2, and they face the Vikings next week.
Here's what everyone
also
will find
0-2.
out when you tune back in on Monday. I'm much better at reacting to games than picking games. Just always keep that in mind, especially given my recent record.
Hey, PointsBet's got you. We've got you on the Moneymaker Locks and wrong team favored. And we're going to have a great football weekend. I can't wait for the slate. It's not a stacked card, so to speak, from top to bottom. But Chad's top 10 revealed we've got a good top 5 of games.
Hey, there's plenty there for you to feast on. Look, it's not the smorgasbord we had last week.
There'll be some surprises.
But it's a strong Golden Corral-like buffet line. You've got all weekend of football games. So enjoy it, everyone.
All you can eat.
Yes. Even with the chocolate fountain at the end. The doubleheader on Monday Night Football is our chocolate fountain at the end of the Golden Corral buffet line.
Back at it on Monday for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on the OutKick Network.